Today we are meeting with the Department of Basic Education to consider the 2023 Appropriation Bill. So let me welcome the Minister of Basic Education, Honorable Mutsecha, the Deputy Minister, Honorable Dr. Mhaule, the Director General of the Department, Mr. Moili, and the staff, the executive from the department, and everybody from the department, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, you are all welcome. So as I said, that we are considering the 2023 Appropriation Bill. So as we do that, we do call departments to interact and deal with them so that they share with us what they will be doing with the money. They share with us their experience in the previous year and years, and then allow the members of the committee to interact with the department. Honorable Minister, we appreciate your being available so that we can engage on issues of national importance. You are most welcome. Darren, do we have apologies?
Chairperson, we received an apology on behalf of Mr. Kwankwa from the members. And then we also received apologies just now on behalf of the Minister of Basic Education. She's in a cabinet meeting, and then the Deputy Minister is in a stakeholder engagement session in the Eastern Cape. So they are not available. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's note the apologies. DG, you are in?
Yes, Honorable Chair, I am in with the team. Let me also add to profusely apologize for the Minister, but the Minister indicated that she's going to join. Her interest is to attend this meeting, Chair. It's always a pleasure to come before your committee. I'm here with the entire team of Basic Education. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, honorable members and colleagues.
Okay, thank you very much. So, DG, what we'll do? So, I hear you saying that the Minister will still be joining us. Am I correct?
That's correct, Chair. The Minister is going to join. She just needs to present something at the CAP committee, and she said as soon as she's done, she'll join at this meeting, Chair.
Okay, that's fine. Let's note that. So what we'll do, DG will give you about 45 to a 1 hour meeting. I mean, time to make your presentation. You don't have to take all the time. It's just maximum. And then after that, the oral members will engage with your presentation. They'll be asking questions, making their comments. And then after that, we'll allow you and the team to respond to the issues that would have been raised by the honorable members. Okay. So with those few words, let me allow you, DG, to start with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members. As I've already indicated, it's always a pleasure to come before your committee, Chair, to present on matters that you request us to come and address. We've organized our presentation into three parts.
DG, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Chair.
Yes, communication always asks us to show our pictures when we interact with the people of South Africa. Please
I'm trying to do that. I've got two devices. I would love to show my picture, but here is my picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. Let's do that. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. There are three parts, Honorable Chair, to our presentation. The first part will deal with the finances and matters relating to broad-based economic empowerment in terms of the guidelines that we received from your honorable committee. And the second part will get into infrastructure The third part will deal with monitoring. We'll share some information in terms of the monitoring that is done by the Deputy Minister, the Minister, myself, the infrastructure team, and the rest of the team within the line function of infrastructure. 45 minutes should be fairly okay, Chair. We'll try and keep within that and not go to an hour. And without any waste of time, I'm going to ask the CFO to start with the first part of the presentation. Then Mr. van der Westhuizen and Ms. Ramahapi will run through it seamlessly in that way. That is okay with you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Mr. Kuno?
Yes, good. Thank you, DG. Good morning, Chair and members of the Standing Committee. I'm not sure who's writing the presentation. Is it you, Mr. Mahada?
Mr. Kuno, your face first, please. The chair has indicated that we need to show our...
My face is showing, DG. I'm not sure whether everybody else can see my face. Can you see my face, Chair?
Asikboni, you don't see.
I nama ngimboni, Chair.
But my, you know, on my gadget, on my computer, my face is showing. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Okay. Continue, but keep on
let me redo it.
Yeah.
Let me redo it. Is it showing now, Chair? Because it's definitely showing on my side.
It's not.
No,
okay,
it's not.
You may proceed. At least we have got the presentation on the screen. Keep on trying, but I think for now, please continue with your presentation.
Okay, Chair. Thank you. Can you see me now, Chair?
No, we only have, no, you may proceed. We have,
Okay. No, that's fine. Sorry about that. Chair, the finance presentation will outline as in part A, appropriation for 2022-23 financial year, then 2023 financial year budget and expenditure, reasons for deviation, requirements for 22-23, conditional grants 22-23, budget and expenditure, appropriation 23-24 financial year, as well as issues on supply chain management. Can we go to the next slide? There we're just showing the purpose, Chair, to present. Sorry, just go back. To present to the Standing Committee preliminary spending outcomes as at the end of 22-23 financial year, plans to utilize a 31.8 billion budget in the 23-24 financial year, and progress report and status on the eradication of mud schools and inappropriate sanitation. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. Chair, we showing there that we got a total adjusted budget for 22-23 of 29.6 billion. 84% of the budget, amounting to 24.7 billion, is allocated to transfer payments, which consist of conditional grants 23.1 billion, transfers to public entities 178 million, other transfers 1.4 billion. And the remainder of the budget of 4.8 billion is allocated to compensation of employees 565 million, goods and services 2.2 billion, interest on rent and land 40 million, payments of capital assets 2 billion, payments of financial assets 364,000. Next slide. We also showing there that the preliminary expenditure for the year is 29.2 billion. And then out of that, 24.7 billion is transfer payments made of conditional grants, transfers to public entities, other transfers, and 4.4 billion is made up of compensation of employees, goods and services, interest on rent and land, payments of capital assets, and payments of financial assets. Next slide. So we're showing that slide shows the spending per, the budget and spending per program. We also show in the last 3 years results, Chair, audited results, but I'll start with the current, the year under review. We spent 98.6%, and these are preliminary figures, Chair, because we're still closing the books. This amount is bound to increase slightly after we finalize the closing of the books. We spend 98.6%, as I indicated on the other side, which is 29.2 billion of the 29.6 billion. And in the previous years, Chair, starting on the extreme right, 2019-20 we spent 97.5%. 2020-21 we spent 97.9%. 2021-22 we spent 99.8%, and this year we're showing preliminary figures of 98.6%. This is bound to increase to about 99.1%. Thanks, Chair. And then we're saying the reason for the variances there is that on program 2, the curriculum, on curriculum policy, we normally pay for workbooks at the end of the financial year, which is the first quarter of the calendar year or the school year. And normally there's a push towards that on getting those invoices to pay service providers. But it has happened in the current financial year that some of the invoices for workbooks came in too late to be captured in the 2022-23 financial year. And then it's because, Chair, if you get invoices, say on the 28th or 29th of the month, it takes about 3 days for those invoices to interface once they're captured. So that's why that's the case. With regards to program 4, the major under expenditure is on the schools infrastructure and backlog infrastructure grants. On that one, Chair, basically what has happened is that some of the IAs, normally what we do on this project program, Chair, is that we give implementing agents a tranche payment, and then as they spend on the tranche, we then record that as expenditure. But towards the end of the year, some of the implementing agents had exhausted their tranches, while some of the implementing agents still had the money in their coffers. So what happened is that there was a mismatch at the end of the financial year, such that when we then pushed to get those IAs which were underspending to return some of the money, but not all of them returned the money, such that we could transfer to IAs which were overspending on their tranches, and then the bulk of the rollover consists of those IAs which overspend their tranches. Next slide. This slide, Chair, shows the environments that we effected during the financial year. Administration, we shifted 5.4 million. And then at the bottom, very last one, education infrastructure, education enrichment services, we shifted 7.7 million. But that together came from program 2, 3.7 million, program 3, 6 million, and program 4, 3.3 million. Next slide.
CFO?
Chair?
Just on the previous slide.
Which
Okay,
one, Chair?
You please also help us and help people of South Africa understand what you are talking about. For instance, when you are talking about educational enrichment services, you should just give a little bit of an explanation what exactly that program is about. You are also talking to South Africans that are listening to you, so let's not assume they understand, if you get my drift.
Yes, no, I do, Chair.
Please.
I was trying to move fast because of time. What happens in the budget process, Chair, is that the budget is divided into 5 programs. Sorry. The program 1 is your administration, which is ordinarily corporate services, basically. Then program 2 is curriculum policy support and monitoring, which deals mainly with the administration of the curriculum. Program 3 deals with teachers, education, human resources, and institutional development. And then program 4 deals with planning, information, and assessment. And program 4 also includes, Chair, the schools in backlogs grant, which is the city grant, or which is the grant that is used for the eradication of inappropriate structures. But that program, Chair, because the bulk of that money is money that we transfer for bursaries. I forget the term that we normally use for bursaries of students who are in the teaching fraternity. So the bulk of that, and education enrichment services, Chair, deals with issues of supporting provinces on matters of education, Chair. Can you go to the next slide? Chair, this slide is basically the same as the previous one, except that on this one, we've gone into more detail. If you look at the right-hand column, those figures on the right, extreme right, are exactly the same as in the previous slide. What we have done here is to give more details, for example, to show that under administration, for us to reach the 5.44 million, we added 4.3 million to compensation of employees, 1.2 million to interest, and we took out 704 million from goods and services, and transfer payments we added 353 and capital asset 228. And then the rest, Chair, in the interest of time, I won't go through the details. And then, Chair, this slide shows the same information as we shown on the slide per program, except that this one shows the budget and expenditure per economic classification. And economic classification in terms of the budget structure of government is compensation of employees, goods and services, interest on rent and land, transfers and subsidies, payments of capital assets, as well as payments of financial assets. But the bottom figures, Chair, is the same. We spent 29.2 billion out of the 29.6 billion, which is 98.6%. But this is preliminary, as I indicated, Chair. Thank you. These reasons, Chair, are the same reasons we showed on the other side. We just repeated them here for record purposes. Then this slide shows allocation of conditional grants. Conditional grants, Chair, are grants that we transfer to provinces for them to spend. For example, we've got a grant on learners with profound disability. We've got a maths, science and technology grant. We've got early childhood or ECD grant. We've got education infrastructure grant or EIG. We've got national school nutrition program, NSNP. And we also have HIV and allocation grants. Chair, the total there is 23.1 billion. We transferred all the money to the provinces by year end. Next slide. This one is transfers, Chair, to other entities. For example, we've got UNESCO membership fees, which we pay. We've got ADEA. We've got the Guidance, Counseling and Youth Development Center of Malawi. We've got Childline Africa, South Africa, sorry. We've got the National Education Collaboration Trust, NECT. We also have NECT disaster response. We also have household. We've got SAC-MEC. We have Uhambo Foundation, ECD, South African Congress for ECD. We've got Ntataise, and we've got NSFAS. NSFAS changed the term that escaped me earlier on when I spoke about bursaries. NSFAS Funza Lushaka. We also have and then the total budget there of those transfers is 1.4 billion. We transferred 100% of that, except for about 112,000 share, which is households. And then we also have additional public entities, which is Umalusi, ETDP, CETA, South African Council for Education, and SACE. And then the total for those entities is 178 million, which we transferred in full. Next slide. Thank you. This slide shows the schools backlogs, schools infrastructure backlogs grant. We had a budget of 2.4 billion. We spent just over 2 billion, which is 86%. And then the breakdown is compensation of employees, goods and services, interest and rent on land, households, as well as building and other fixed structures. Next slide. This slide shows the budget for the current financial year 23-24, and it's broken down per program. Is administration 538 million, program 2 curriculum 3.5 billion, program 3 teachers education resources. Sorry, go back please. Yeah. Program 3, 1.5 billion, program 4, 16.6 billion, program 5, 9.5 billion, and the total is 31.7 billion. Next slide. Yeah, it's the same information, Chair, except that on this one, we show the same information per economic classification, compensation of employees, goods and services, interest on rent and land transfers and subsidies, as well as payments of capital assets. Next slide. On this slide, Chair, we're showing the budget for conditional grants, which is 25.3 billion, divided into learners with profound disability grant, MST, Math Science and Technology grant, early childhood ECD, education infrastructure grant, NSNP, as well as HIV and allocation grant. Other transfers, which we showed as expenditure, the budget for this current year is 1.4 billion. Yeah, and then for public entities, Umalisi and others, 179 million budget share. And then for the schools infrastructure backlogs grant, the budget has gone slightly lower to 2 billion. The previous the previous year's budget, or the year under review's budget, was 2.4 billion. And then under supply chain management, Chair, we show in there. Let me just put on my glasses, sorry, Chair. So we're showing there that at the bottom there, we're showing total supplier spend, and the information that we collated was from April to November. It's 548 million, and it's broken down, Chair, at the top there, 64% of the budget was allocated to blacks, women, 29% of the spend, so not budget, and youth, 1%. Military veterans, we don't have the information. Disability grant as well. Underdeveloped areas, 0.1%. Township, 0.6%. So what we also say in there is that the challenges we have is that the central supplier database that is used in government does not make that breakdown in terms of gender, disability, and related matters. So that's why it's difficult. It doesn't necessarily mean that the people that have been allocated contracts do not fall in that, but it's not easy to get that information, to suss that information out. But we are also saying, in order to report better as an intervention in future, the department would request service providers to sign a declaration to confirm that the information provided is true and correct. And then we're also saying at the bottom, the failure of bidders to provide the required and accurate information for statistics purposes. It's not always possible. It's not a, you know, some of the information which is not mandatory for yet, but we are also saying we'll try and come with mandatory requirements for bidders to provide the information at the time of bidding. As I say, Chair, we'll do this bearing in mind that we cannot superimpose some of the conditions which are not in the PPFA by insisting that by saying if a bidder doesn't give this information, they'll be disqualified. All right, so but we will try that. This slide, Chair, is the same information as the previous slide, except that this is more it's a further breakdown. As you see, Chair, women shareholding, sorry, 28%, 28.5, blacks 64.2, youth 1.36. The next slide actually is the same information except that it's in Word format than in table format. I think, yeah, what we've since done, Chair, if we all remember, there was a Constitutional Court decision last year, which resulted in Treasury instructing that all departments should come with PPFA policies which related to BEE. We've since put a policy together, Chair, and then in our policy, we've let me just explain that in supply chain or in procurement, we've got two facets. We've got what we call the 80-20 preference points and the 90-10 preference points. 80-20 are also those bids which fall below 50 million. Up to 50 million, we use the 80-20 preference points. I'll explain that. And above 50 million, we use the 90-10 preference points. So what it means, Chair, is that 80 in the 80-20 is allocated to price. 80% of the 80-20 is allocated to price, and then 20 is allocated to preference points. Previously, it used to be called BBBE points. So that requirement meant that because the Constitutional Court declared the then regime to not be constitutional, we then had to go as the department to put a policy together on the 20, not on the 80, because the 80 is price. And then what we've done is that out of the 20 points, we've allocated 5 points to blacks, 8 points to women, 1 point to disability, people living with disabilities, and 6 points to youth. And we did this in line with the directives for within the RDP. What we then did with the 90-10, we prorated down such that black people would get 2 points out of the 10, not out of the 22 points. Women 4 points, disabled or living with disability 1 point, and youth 3 points. In our view, Chair, this will ensure that black people, women, youth, and people with living with disabilities are given an advantage on allocated preference points during the procurement process. Next slide. I think this should be the last slide from my side. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll hand over to Mr. Van der Westhuizen. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. I'm trying to show my picture here. So let's move to the infrastructure. Next slide, Mr. Mada. There are several sources of information that gives us a good overview of what happened with school sanitation over the last 30 years. The first very important document.
I can.
Jay, shall I proceed?
No. Okay, just a second. I was just requesting that everybody else, except for the presenter, I'm requesting that you mute your gadgets. Please continue, sir.
Thank you, Chair. The very important document where we start with the information infrastructure was in 1996. Then the Department of Education compiled what they called a school register of need. That was the first time in the history of the country where all public schools were entered into a single database. So from the previous provinces, the homelands, self-governing state, farm schools, private land schools, they were all gathered together, and we have for the first time had a review of the status of school infrastructure. So that is generally referred to as the SRN, the School Register of Needs, 1996. That document was updated in 2000 through questionnaires sent out to provinces, and that became known as the SRN 2000. Then in 2005, the then Department of Education went out and tendered, and they appointed a service provider that developed a national education infrastructure management system. We referred to that thing as NIMS. The NIMS was completed and launched in 2007. Then ASIDI started in 2011. Now ASIDI had specific focus. ASIDI was focused on schools, first of all, where the entire school was made of inappropriate materials. And there were several schools on that program. Then they also focused on schools that had no water supply, to get water supply to those schools, schools with no toilets, and also schools with no electricity. So it's very important just to note the focus of the ASIDI program, but it also gave us benchmarks on what was the status of the infrastructure at that time. Then in 2018, the Department of Basic Education launched the SAFE program, or the Sanitation Appropriate for Education. Now, the specific focus on this one was there are many schools that were dependent on basic pit toilets. We will further on just deal with the differentiation between a basic pit toilet and another form of pit toilets. So at that point in time, there was a number of schools identified to be dependent. They've got no other toilets, only these basic pit toilets. And that gave us a figure there. And then we are tracking these things on a weekly basis. I think the DG alluded to our monitoring programs. So we've got almost every 5 years a status. So we are very glad to share that with you. Next slide, Chair. Mr. Mahara. So if we look at just the number of ordinary schools, it's important to note that when the first set of consolidated data got together, at that point in time, 1906, they had 27,004 schools on the database. It increased slightly over the next two reviews. So by the time the NIMS was developed in 2005 and released in 2007, there was 28,786 schools. That seems to be the maximum number at the time. Where we are at the moment, we are about 22,500. That's a drop of over 6,000 schools from that high number in 2007. So what happened during that period, there was a concerted effort to clean up the database, but also to clean up all these schools that we inherited in the system. There were many small and unviable schools, and that was cleaned up, and that explains the difference there. If we look at the specific sub-programs, this one dealing with schools made of inappropriate structures. So it's commonly referred to as mud schools or plankie schools. So in 1996, not very easy to get the real number there. If we start to look at the various data sets that they've got there, it seems to be in the order of about 1,000 schools at that point in time that can be described as entirely inappropriate structures. In 2011, when we started with the city, there were 510 schools in this category. And again, that number were cleaned up through rationalization of small and unviable schools and merger of some schools, realignment of schools. There were all these combined schools. We are now moving away from all of that. We have primary schools and secondary schools. So in that number reduced to 332. So what we can announce at the end of March this year, 330 of those schools had been replaced with proper, adequate, brand new schools and appropriate structures. There's only 2 schools remaining that are currently in construction. It's Salomzi and Riverview, and they are all scheduled for completion around about the end of Q1. That's just an example. If we look at water supply, here we've got very clear figures in the 96 values there. So this thing started in 96 with over 8,800 schools recorded with no water supply, and that number came down significantly. So at the time when a city started, there was just over 1,000 schools on that program, and we can report then by the end of March this year, there were 14 projects in construction that did not make it to practical completion that will be completed in Q1. On water, on electricity, when the city or the first SRN report was done, they had over 15,000 schools with no electricity. At the time when a city was launched in 2011, 902 schools were identified. This number also came down due to rationalization of 373. We had good cooperation from Eskom, and all 373 schools have been served with proper electricity supply. Next one, if we then move to toilets. So let's focus from here on sanitation. So the first one on our city, those were the schools that had no toilets. So in the 1996 figures, 3,265 schools identified with no toilets. And also, as we get different data sets, it came down significantly. When our city was launched, there were 701 on that initial round of schools with no toilets. Further assessment revealed that that number was incorrect, and there was over 1,000 of that. So the 1,087 schools on that city program, by the end of March, 1,085 has been completed, only 2 remain in construction, due for completion in the first quarter. If we then move to say, our city dealt with all those schools that had no services. Now they've got services, so one level up. Now we need to deal with schools that do have toilets, but they only have basic pit toilets. So here it's just important to differentiate. I trust the members understand this, but we have to discuss this in presentations with other entities. We constantly have to remind them there's a difference between a basic pit toilet, that photograph on the top there, typical zinkies, some timber structures, in general, unacceptable, inappropriate, and the policy of the department means all of those must be demolished, made safe, and completely eradicated. On the bottom, we talk about ventilated improved pit latrines. This is sort of the international standard for dry sanitation. There's an SABS standard as part of the national building regulations that deals with the design and construction of ventilated improved pit toilets. There's some photographs of the look and feel of what we provided. Under our City and Safe, we have most probably added about 55,000 of those countrywide. Just the breakdown of the figures. So I'm going to start on the top. On the left, the first yellow figure there, 3898. When the SAFE program was launched in 2018, there was an assessment made of those schools dependent on basic pit toilets. And that answer that came back there was 3,898 schools. Those schools were then allocated to implementing agents. They appointed service providers to go and do a detailed assessment. Part of the detailed assessment came back to say some of these schools have been closed due to the rationalization process. So we've got 252 of those schools closed. There are some of those schools that in fact do have appropriate toilets, but they were just in a bad condition. So they just need maintenance to get them fixed. And we also had 7 in private schools. So that is just an explanation of the 2 green figures of not proceeding and intervention required. It's just a breakdown of the 3898, consists of 1,116 not proceeding due to the reasons in yellow there, and then those carry forward. Subsequent to the launch of SAFE in 2018, an additional 809 schools, I'm on the top yellow block on the right-hand side, an additional 809 schools were added to the program. Same story, allocated implementations, go and do a detailed assessment, and again, some of those schools then were removed from the program and not proceeding. So where we have the answer then is that you have the schools that require intervention, is then 3395, and I can just indicate that should be 3390, it's just my typing error, my apology. And then that then deals going down in how did we address that. Some of those projects were implemented by donors or by the provinces, 1,150 of those, and some of those were implemented by us under SAFE through implementing agents, and I'm indicating the status of that. Next slide, please. So if we look at the schools dependent on basic pit toilets, moving back to 1996 again, it's not very easy to get the real figure there. At that point, they did not differentiate between basic pit toilets and ventilated improved pit toilets. So we had to make a bit of an assumption there, but the order of magnitude is just 9,500 schools in that category. As mentioned, when we started with SAFE in 2018, 3,898. Of that, we've made very good progress. We've got 727 schools left, all allocated to implementing agents and all scheduled for completion in this financial year. If we just quickly look at the lessons learned, what went right and what did not go right? And we are open and transparent, and we come to this forum with the facts. So what we've realized that worked well, we need to have a bit of a stick and a carrot approach. So there must be a stick. We need to have constant pressure on these implementing agents and service providers, and we must rigorously monitor their progress so they don't fall asleep and things just don't fall through the cracks. We are very tough on the application of the contractual conditions like penalties for late completion, and we are now also busy with a process of restricting defaulters from doing business with government. We've started to name and shame specific individuals and companies, and we are just following the due process to get those defaulters listed with National Treasury on defaulters, and they will be restricted from doing business with the state. But parallel to that, you need to have a carrot approach as well, and we need to make it possible for these service providers to perform. So we need to do the best we can to ensure prompt payment. Mr. Kuno said that in most cases, we make tranche payments to implementing agents, so they don't need to wait for cash. It is only Mabula Trust that we deal with, and we try to deal with their payments within a week. Also, if they request any feedback from the department in terms of concurrence or decisions, we try to do that as quick as possible and to standardize operating procedures and make it as quick as possible. Next one, please. In terms of monitoring, if you look at the entire life cycle of the project, from the time the need is assessed, the whole design phase, the tender phase, the construction phase, right up to completion, there are various aspects of monitoring. We are going into all 21 of those and making sure that we keep our tabs on what is happening there. So if we look at the next one, this is the number of visits. I think Mrs. Ramapi in her presentation will share some more information on what is happening there. We can just say that we have weekly meetings with the operational teams of implementing agents, with the people doing the work. We also have then weekly meetings with their bosses, the executive management and the CEOs of these implementing agents, and then every Friday we report to the minister and the deputy minister. So this is as updated on a weekly basis. Just in terms of the built environment capacity, what we also realize is that we need to have built environment capacity if you want to deal with massive programs. A 2.4 billion infrastructure program must be run by infrastructure people. So pre-2008, 18, we had very limited. We had 4 resources in the national department with some built environment expertise. We have now moved to the point where there are 22 of those. If we look at some challenges, like I say, we come here absolutely open. There are many schools suffering from overcrowding. This is the hot topic at the moment. There are overcrowding issues in every province. It is not limited only to Gauteng and Western Cape. There is definitely a tendency for urban schools to be more overcrowded than rural schools. We also find that it seems that secondary schools are more overcrowded than primary schools. Many schools still have inappropriate sanitation, and that may be a variety. There's the 772 that we are fixing up, the schools that are dependent on basic pit toilets, but there are also other schools that do have appropriate toilets, but the numbers are wrong. They need 30 and they only have 20. So that is still a main focus. There's also a good focus on maintenance. Schools that have just through the years deteriorated in terms of condition. In the education infrastructure grant, the big money that goes to the provinces, around 15 billion per year, we've changed the grant framework to insist that 60% of that grant must be spent on maintenance to make sure that we keep the condition up. The reliability of planning information remains a major challenge. The NIMS that was developed in 2007 has fallen a bit behind, and we are currently pushing a huge effort to get updated information from the provinces. We had a workshop with the heads of education departments a week ago, where this is a key priority. Tomorrow we're making a presentation to the Council of Education Ministers, where this will put up there as a key priority to get the right information and to make sure that all the planning happens in accordance with that information. Part of that is that there are capital projects coming up from the provinces that are not aligned with national priorities. So we are now at that space where we are going to insist that the project list of the provinces must be aligned with national priorities, and they are on the top: the overcrowding, sanitation, maintenance. Business forums started relatively small, isolated cases in some provinces. It became a much wider spread phenomena, and it's really a serious influence on the progress on site. Number 7 is we are working very hard to standardize and to simplify processes, designs, specifications, contracts to make it easier for service providers to perform. We've also realized that there was an over-reliance on implementing agents. The implementing agents used by us in the education sector is exactly the same implementing agents used by health and by some of the provinces and by some. So a lot of these implementing agents are overstretched, and we need to come up with new plans. We have developed a 10-point strategy that will deal with an alternative approach that we believe can really assist us. Poor performance service providers, we mentioned the consequence management. We are pursuing this issue of restricting non-performers with Treasury, and then monitoring. Thanks, Jane. Next one. So if we just get a feel for the numbers. So based on the planning information that we have available, we have built in the department what we call a DBE, a capital investment planner, which is a huge spreadsheet with 23,000 schools, and then per school doing a calculation on, based on the learner numbers, how many toilets are required, how many toilets do we have, what is the backlog, how much water is required, how many tanks are required, what is the backlog, how many classrooms are required, what is available, what is the backlog. And so all the aspects and trying to put numbers to these. So what we've got, and I won't go into the detail of this, is that on item 1 is 129 billion is the estimated value of the infrastructure backlog. If you spread that over 7 years, you get item 2, which is about 18 billion per year for the next 7 years to eradicate that backlog. If you go further, you prioritize that, very cutting it to the bone, and indicating there as one scenario, you get a sort of a minimum capital investment of 8 billion per year that is required. We do the same for maintenance. There's preventative maintenance, reactive maintenance. Estimate about 100 billion backlog maintenance that must be implemented. You can also do that over 7 years. So item 5 give you a number there of about 23. Again, if you cut that in half, it's about 12. So just on the right.
Can you gallop a little bit? Time is gone.
So the total requirement of investment is the order of 20 billion. So on the next slide, we are indicating that that 20 billion in red is significantly more than the EIG. So we have to work with the blended finance model to address these issues. In terms of the way forward, we indicated that we've developed a 10-point strategy, moving away and addressing all those challenges and lessons learned. This has been presented to HEDCOM. We are presenting that to the CEM tomorrow. Next one is then there's a, below the strategy, we've then developed tactics of how to get these things done, and we are currently working on an operational plan. In the workshop, we've started to populate the specific actions of the operational plan, and again, that is taken to CM tomorrow for finalization. Thank you.
Ms. Ramapi, quickly, please. Time is not on our side.
Thank you very much, DG. Good morning, Honorable Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. Can I request that I share the screen, Chair? Good morning, DG, senior managers, and the colleagues from the DG. Can I be allowed to share the screen? Okay, I think it's not happening. Mr. Mada, can you share the screen? I'll come to your office and present them. Thank you.
Mr. Mahada, are you able to load? Mr. Mahada? Okay, good. Ms. Ramapi, show your face quickly and then fly with the presentation.
Thank you very much, DG. Mine, I'm going to be quicker, DG. I am going to share a presentation on the monitoring of the infrastructure delivery, where we are. The slides are not moving. Okay. Just have to indicate that we've been monitoring the SAFE projects due to the importance of this program. The DG is the one who's leading the team that is monitoring the projects. The slides are not moving, okay. And then this is a composition of the monitoring team. These are the expertise of the team. This is a methodology that we are using to collect the data. And then this is the analysis of the data collected through Google Form. This is a limitation of our observations, where we are encountering situations where we find that we don't have access to the schools because the premises have been locked because we are arriving early in the morning, and sometimes we finish late in the evening. There's a terrain of the monitoring because we are focusing on 3 provinces, which is KZN, Limpopo, and Eastern Cape. And then this is a terrain, this is a DigiSCAR. This is the utility of the vehicles that are used to monitor this sanitation projects. These are the cars that have been used. This is a DigiSCAR in the Eastern Cape. And this is the monitoring through also our weekly meetings, where the Mr. Van der Westhuizen has already indicated that we are also having meetings with the minister every Friday. And these are the points that we are focusing on during the meetings. And Mr. Van der Westhuizen also shared the slides where the DG has visited the site more than 3,000 times, and the project support units also visited the sites more than 6,000 times. And then we've got 2 categories where we are focusing on the initial stage of the construction until they reach practical completion. And we are also having category B, where we are monitoring this project after practical completion to determine whether the facilities have been handed over to the schools in appropriate conditions, and they are also being used by the school as well as the demolition of in appropriate structures. Category B, A projects, the aim, I've already indicated that this is where we are pushing the project so that the projects can be completed on time. And then the silent observations, we are also having a scorecard that we are using to make sure that we assess all the projects that we are visiting. And then, and firstly, we are starting with a work program, because we all know that the construction companies are supposed to develop a work program. So most of the time when we arrive on site, we are requesting the work program, where we are asking to check the work program so that we can check whether the contractor is on schedule or not. So this is just an example of a work program. And then I just have to indicate that in our observation, we picked up that the construction has been delayed due to rocky and mountainous areas. And in some instances, when people know that the DG will be visiting the sites, we were met where in some sites, the materials were either being delivered as we arrived or en route for delivery. And then in some instances, there is no dedicated team per block, because most of the time we are building about 4 blocks, and then the contractor will only have one team for a block. And these are some of the things that are causing the projects to not be completed on time. And then in some instances, there is no brick reinforcement being used by the contractor. There is also inadequate or no site establishment. In some instances, the contractor is being delayed because he's still waiting for the ordered materials. We also picked up that the walkway, they don't make provision for the people with disabilities, because we are also building the toilets for the disabled. The contractor, sometimes they've abandoned the site due to non-payment. Backfilling and compaction not properly done. You can see that if the backfilling and compaction is not done, the toilets are sinking. Disagreements with the community on the location of a site. Contractor sometimes is awaiting for the advice from the engineer if he is encountering problems on site. In some instances, we picked up a contractor where he did not read and interpret the plan and drawings correctly. And if that is the case, it means that the contractor have to demolish the building that he has already started. Example of the renovation where a contractor has recommended that this building needs to be renovated, and this building, you can't renovate it. It was supposed to be a building that was supposed to be demolished. So it's some of the things that is that made us to indicate to the contractor that you can't renovate this building because it doesn't even qualify for renovation. You just have to demolish and start the new toilets from scratch. We also pick up where a Department of Public Works have already started building the Grade R facilities, but they did not complete this project. So now, because of the unreliable information that we receive from the provinces, and then the contractor, because of he has been issued with the appointment letter, we found out that the contractor was busy doing some excavation so that he can build the new facilities from scratch. And this was going to cause us a fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Because of this monitoring that we are doing, we had to stop the contractor. That the only thing that he has to do, he just have to finish what a Department of Public Works have started and just finish this project, not start to build the new facilities from scratch. So some instances, no workers on site. Project is behind because of cash flows. Contractor took time to start the projects. Examples of poor workmanship. Yeah, the contractor had to redo the foundation for Grade R toilets because he did not do a proper job. And we're also using the legends that are also used by the AGSA. This is self-explanatory. And here we are just showing where, because we have visited this sites 2 times. So we visited them in February, we also visited them in March. So here we are just showing that in some instances, the contractor, when we arrive on site, they will come with us, but when we leave, they leave the site, because this is an example of a project where the project did not start during our first visit. Even when we visited the site for the second time, the project has not yet been started by the contractor. These are just examples of where the projects are still on the same level where we left them when we started to visit them. There's another project here, at least this is a contractor That started with the work on site. When we visit for the second time, at least something has been done. And this is just an example of contractors that are making progress. There's another contractor that had made progress after we visited the site for the second time. And then we've got category B projects. These are the aim of the category B project, where I indicated that these are the projects that have been completed. Now we just have to go back and check on the quality. That's what happened. This is a scorecard that we are using. In these instances, we picked up that the rubble has not yet been cleared, because we have to remember that they have to demolish the old and inappropriate structure. They were supposed to, after demolishing the structure, to clear the rubble on site. There was also poor workmanship on site. The walkway below ground level, V-drain not properly done. Tank is leaking, door need to be fixed, and we also need a screen wall. Here, a screen wall that does not serve as the screen wall that not fully serving its intended purpose. Old toilets were supposed to be demolished because they have already built the new toilets. These are just example of old structures that were supposed to be demolished. No hurricane clips. Incomplete demolition. Here, the contractor started with demolition, but they did not complete the demolishing. Dividing wall in the teachers' toilets needs to be up to the roof level, because we always encourage that the toilets for the male and the female teachers, the dividing wall needs to be up to the roof level. Here, we also picked up the learners who were playing with the toilets that were provided to the school during COVID time, defects on butler doors. Here is issues of poor workmanship, no fencing for grade R facilities, because we always encourage that there should be fencing for the grade R facilities, because we don't want the grade R learners to associate with the bigger learners. Walkway in the middle of nowhere, because this walkway was supposed to be linked to the classrooms. Poor workmanship, no uniformity in the toilet facilities that have been provided to the schools. The issues of vandalism also, because the tap was missing, the fallen vent pipes. But it's not only the bad projects. We also had, we also visited the good projects that was done by our contractors. These are just examples of the good projects. And we are also monitoring the sites using the WhatsApp group. Here, these are just the issues where the principals, they are, because in the WhatsApp group, we've got school principals, circuit managers, the work inspectors, and the implementing agents. So the principals are reporting on what is happening on sites. So they are also helping us in monitoring to make sure that the projects are being finished on time. These are just examples of the principals that are complaining to say that the contractor is not yet arrived on site. They last seen the contractor during February. Now it's April. The contractor is no longer on site. And we also have compliments where the principals are also appreciating the work that we have done as the department. So these are just examples of the messages that have been sent to us by the principals. And then these are just the legends of the observations, because after we visit the site, we usually meet with the contractors to indicate what we saw on site. These are just the progress made that we usually share with our implementing agents to indicate to them, out of all the projects that we visited, what did we see on site? We indicate to them that sometimes projects have not yet started and what is really happening. So these are the things that we are sharing with our implementing agents. We also share the information about the contractors. We also share information about the project managers that have been appointed by the implementing agents. We are also rating the project managers. And we also have best practices where we are also sharing it with the contractors. So here, I just want to share just a few best practices. Here is one implementing agents. Before they can allow the bricklayers to start work on our sites, they usually put them through a practical test. So these are just good examples that we are sharing with our implementing agents. And we are also encouraging the contractors that they have to make sure that the inside walls, they should use the face brick. And then we are showing them the proper and the quality construction of the walkways. And we are also showing them the quality of the V-drain. Also, we are saying that they have to make sure that the manhole lids are being locked. And we also have the colorful doors that we shared with our implementing agents. We also indicate to them that they must install the hand washing basins next to the tanks. Then these are the suitable toilets for learners doing grade R, properly construction of manholes. We are also sharing the recommendation. When you see red, we are saying that this is unacceptable. When we are indicating green, we are saying that this is the best project, this is a good project that we saw when we set the site. So these are just examples of the walkways, and these are examples of the V-drains, examples of the construction of the V-drains, examples of the retaining walls, examples of the proper inside walls. Like we've indicated that if we are plastering our inside walls, the learners are writing on the walls. That is why we are saying that they need to use the face bricks. And then examples of the mounting and fitting of the vent pipes and wheelie beds, fitting of urinal pipes, provision of manhole lids, provision of manhole locks. And then we are saying that we also picked up that there are implementing agents where they are just doing the clear windows in the toilets, and you know that in the toilets we need to have frosted windows, not the clear windows. Installation of the column support in the screen wall, proper fencing of the grade R toilets, proper walkways for people with disabilities, provision of adult toilets for staff facilities, because we picked up that they are also providing the toilet facilities that are used by the learners. So we are always looking at that when we are visiting the sites. And then there's a provision of proper toilets for the grade R learners, proper site establishment, because it's very important that our site needs to be established, because you can see that our learners are very inquisitive. They will want to go on site to see what is happening. So we are very strict in making sure that the contractors are adhering to the health and safety issues, the proper cleaning of the facilities, and the proper immediate demolition of all structures, and then hurricane clips, and also examples of the butler doors, examples of the backfilling, make sure that backfilling is properly done. And also we are encouraging our contractors to make sure that they provide the she-bin for the ladies' toilets and also the toilets for the girls, and installation of hand washing basins. And we are saying we are not tolerating the poor workmanship that we see on sites. And we are also picking up that most of the instances when people know that the DG will be visiting the sites, you will find that people are waiting for the DG to indicate that the contractor has not yet paid them, or sometimes the contractor has not yet paid their subcontractors. Thank you very much. That is all from my side, DG.
Thank you, Mr. Kuno, Mr. van der Westhuizen, Ms. Ramahapi. Chair, just one point, curriculum enrichment, it's one of the 3 programs that are located within program 5. You've got school health promotion, which includes National School Nutrition Program and the general health of our learners in our schools. And then you've got curriculum enrichment, which is sports, arts, and culture. That's what curriculum enrichment is about, sports, arts, and culture. As Mr. Kuno said, those are the programs that are supporting the implementation of the curriculum, teaching and learning. Learners need to play, they need to be involved in physical activities so that their brains are activated and they become bright in the classroom. So those programs are enriching learning in the classroom. And then the last one, it's a social cohesion, which is about values in education. Those are the programs that are located under program 5, which you requested Mr. Kuno to explain. Thank you for your indulgence. My profuse apologies that we've gone over the time that you had allocated to us. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members.
Thank you so much, DG and your team for the presentation. I think that gives us enough meat to proceed from. Honorable members, you know how we do it. Can I have indication of the honorable members who would like to have a bite on the presentation?
Mare.
I'm from Memezi.
Honorable Mare, Honorable Memezi,
Matafa.
Honorable Matafa,
Mlenzana.
Honorable Mlenzana,
Kaiso.
Honorable Kaiso. Yes, other members. Any other member?
Nothing from me for now, Chair.
Noted, Honorable Tobias. Okay, honorable members, I know we are very disciplined with time. I'm not going to time you. Please ask your questions, but let's just be aware that the other members would still want to talk after us, and then also allow the department to respond. Honorable Mare, please come in.
Thank you, Chairperson. We're always disciplined, sir. Okay, I'm a particular interest in program 4, and it's regarding the school infrastructure. As we've seen, there was an underspend of around about 318 million on this projects within this school infrastructure. But it's easy to say that the full amount is due to unpaid outstanding invoices. But can be highlighted what actual amount is being allocated to unpaid invoices and what is the actual amount of underspending that is not spent. There's a difference between unpaid invoices and amount that is not spent at all. And then I would love if we could be informed what is requested over the last 3 years for rollover money from this department from National Treasury. What did they request in the last 3 years? And then my third question would be is, what is the actual performance percentage-wise of each province spent on their infrastructure against the allocation they have received? I will really, if they can highlight us on those 9 provinces. And my last one is, no, second last, is, we always, everybody had a lot of talk about there's not enough schools throughout South Africa. There's too many students. And then I can't understand where there's an underspent if the money is there. But after this enlightened presentation, we can see there's definitely a problem with the contractors. Now, my question is, if there's a serious problem with some contractors, are they being blacklisted by the Department of Education? And how do they monitor if they blacklist? Because if a company is underperforming or not at all, it must be blacklisted. But do they also look into the directorship of those companies? Because if you blacklist them, the next thing they do, they form a new company and it's the same people again under a new name. So the department should be aware of who they can appoint as a contractor and who they can't appoint due to very poor performance or no performance at all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Mare. Honorable Memez, it's your turn.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me take the opportunity to appreciate the presentation.
Just a second, Honorable Memezi. I know sometimes we have connectivity challenges, but we should know that our first, our optimal situation is where we show our videos. Yeah, so
thank you very much, Chairperson. I hope now visible.
Yes, you are.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Honorable Memezi, it's very important that the department should also be able to recognize you on the streets. So that's why I want you to show your faces. Thank you very much. Let's see. Yeah, thank you.
Chairperson, I also want to take the opportunity to welcome the detailed report by the department, and indeed appreciate it. Thank you, DG and the team, the minister in advance. Can I ask 2 questions? Maybe one will have a follow-up. From slide 34, there is a recorded decline of 6,287 of operational schools from 28,876 in 1996 to 22,589 in 2022. What are the reasons for this decline, and in which provinces are these declines mostly located? A follow-up to that question would be, what is the infrastructure of that 6,286 schools not operational currently being used for? The last question, there is an indication that in 2011, 510 schools were made on inappropriate infrastructure, but only 332 schools formed part of the department's ASIDI program. There is a difference of 178 schools that did not form part of the ASIDI program. My question is therefore, what are the reasons behind prioritizing only 332 schools as opposed to the total of 510 schools that were considered to have inappropriate structures? I think I must stop there, Chair, in line of the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oral Memezi, Oral Matafa.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, Chair, members, DG, and the team. Chair, let me start by welcoming the presentation that was made. As always, the departments never disappoint. Their presentation is very concise and speaks to issues that we have requested them to speak on. But maybe, Chair, on an informal basis and on a lighter note, I'm an avid fan of off-roading and 4x4s. So the next time the DG goes on the site inspection. Yes, Chair?
Yes, please, you may switch off your video. We are losing you.
Am I audible now, Chair?
Yes, thank you. Please repeat there's the last part which we couldn't hear. Please repeat that one.
Am I audible now?
Very much so, thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair. You know, I was saying, Chair, I'm an avid fan of off-roading and 4x4s. So when the DG goes on another site inspection, he must take us with as a committee so that we can experience the work they do on the ground. But I think, Chair, on a serious note, that requires commenting that indeed monitoring and evaluation happens physically, because in most cases you find that reports look good on paper, but in actual fact, when you go and experience what is on the ground is not correlating with what is on paper. So for that, I wish to commend the DG and the team that they are willing to get their boots dirty and be with the teams that are working on the ground. Chair, let me just pose these few questions that I have. And the first one is on slide 39, whereby the school register of needs, which is dated 2006, indicated that 8,823 schools were without water supply. Since 2006 up until now, how many schools remain without water? And in the instance where there are any schools that remain without water, what measures are in place to ensure that this situation is corrected? Chair, with the same number, you will know that only 1,306 schools had formed part of the ASIDI program of water supply projects. Why is it so? And maybe it will be also for the benefit of the committee, important to be finished with the provinces in which the 1,292 schools where their projects are completed. Chair, the second one, the question is related to slide 42. Similarly to the first question, how many schools are without electricity supply across the country? And are there measures that are being considered in order to eradicate this particular situation? And currently, are there any other sources of energy that the department is considering in this particular areas to assist the schools to be able to be functional? Chair, on the issue, this one I'm not sure if whether will it fall under a CD, I'll call it a CDA, SIDI, or the SAFE program. This is the number of schools that were affected by the floods or natural disasters. How many remain damaged, and what are the impact of the interventions that have been made thus far? Chair, on slide 58, it lists the challenges experienced by the department in implementing the SAFE program. Challenge number 1 and 2 contribute directly to why there has seemingly been very little progress in eradicating peat latrines and the deadline being extended annually, something that this committee is passionate about, and a committee will not sit and the department is before us. We don't touch on this issue. Owing to the inconsistencies and inaccurate data provided by provincial departments, the assertion that there are 727 remaining sanitation projects which needs to be taken, is it an accurate number that we can rely on? Because in terms of where we are sitting, this number seems to be understated. Can we be with confidence assured that this number is the correct one, particularly as it relates to the issue of peat latrines? The reason, Chair, we're raising this is that when you look at data from other stakeholders like Amnesty International, they estimate that around 5,000 schools have peat latrines and do not have proper sanitation facilities. Hence, we say we think that the 727 is understated, but we are hopeful that the department will be able to clarify this particular number once and for all. The last one, Chair, is just on the issue of scholar transport. Has the department engaged or made presentations to the National Treasury or Cabinet regarding the creation of such a grant so that we are able to assist those learners that require transport assistance to be able to reach their learning facilities? Chair, I will pause there. Once again, thank you very much for the presentations, DG, and greeting to the Minister if they've joined the presentation. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity to participate in the discussion.
Thank you, Honorable Matafa. Can I request Honorable Mlenzana to come in, please?
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning, DG and the team. I'm not sure if the Minister has joined, but let me assume that she has joined and greet her also. And appreciate that she's always willing and being part of her team when engaging us at the department. Chair, you know, for the first time now, I'm using 3 gadgets, but I will try. Let me start with this generic question, Chairperson. On monitoring, particularly in-year monitoring by the department, of course, and the Treasury, I want to check with the Minister, DG, and your team. Your relations with the provincial treasuries of the Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga in particular. I think this is a generic question with other provinces as well, but specifically these 2. I'm raising this, Chairperson, because we have seen money unspent for infrastructure development program, the school infrastructure development program in the Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga, and we saw it, part of it being redirected to the Western Cape. Chair, I am not anti-Western Cape. I think the media should capture this correctly. However, my further question to the Minister and teacher would be, until when you are negating in monitoring in these poor provinces like Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga, not furthering that old slogan of taking from the poor to the rich, so as to make the rich get more richer, and those who are weak and are unable to perform to get weaker. Because as I speak now, I am not sure, Chair, of the number of schools which were the would-be beneficiaries in Mpumalanga and Eastern Cape, vis-a-vis the number of schools which benefited in the Western Cape as a result of the transfer of this money. Two, I am not sure if we can get, Chair, the infrastructure condition of the would-be beneficiaries in the Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga versus the infrastructure condition of the schools which benefited in the Western Cape. Thirdly, around the same matter, is this the perpetual arrangement that we are going to see, that those provinces which are unable to spend would then at the end of the day disarm, if that is the correct word, or do not allow the children of those schools to benefit from what we always appropriate as this committee to these provinces. The second one, Chair, would be, it's more specific, this one, Chair. You know, I'm sitting here, Honorable Minister, with a school which this time of the year has got a full class of learners, 139 learners. They are grade 8 learners of a school in the OR Tambo Coastal District. The school is Mkezwa Junior Secondary School. They are still without learner support material, the LTSM. As we speak now, the full class, grade 8. They say there's a story behind this. Material stored at the provincial warehouse and so on and so on and so on. But up as we speak now, there is no learner support material at the school. Chair, I am passionate, Chair, with rural development. My last two questions, which are related, of course. According to the 2013 regulations relating to the minimum uniform norms and standards for public school infrastructure, all schools should have libraries, media centers, or media centers. And those that offer science should be having laboratories. Now, can I get a breakdown of the implementation of this particular infrastructure in each province? What is the percentage of schools without this infrastructure per province? Can we get the number of schools or percentage of schools wherein you have got mobile structures of such infrastructure, which has temporary structures, and those which do have the fully fledged infrastructure? The same question, Chair, goes to the libraries. How many, particularly the rural schools, where we have built libraries and laboratories for those underdeveloped schools. Can we get the same back, what do I mean? The same categories broken down also from quintile 1 up. I know you would have quintile 1, quintile 2, quintile 3 in particular. I know that a majority of quintile 4 up schools would have these facilities. Thanks, Chair, for giving me this opportunity. And as I said, that I would always have interest in school libraries and laboratories, and sports infrastructure and all. But if you have time, you will give me a second bite. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mlenzanam. Thank you very much. Honorable Taiso, please come in.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and the delegation of the Department of Basic Education and the Minister in her absentia. Chair, I have a number of questions to engage on the presentation. I think I want to firstly agree with my colleague, Honorable Mata, that perhaps, Chair, if we had sufficient time, given this presentation from the department, we definitely we need to take a round of oversight visit to see what we have been talking about and what we have been presented to as this committee, especially around the progress and what we have been appropriating for the school, for the department, over the improvement of overall school infrastructure in particular. So my first question is around the issue that we have just sharply raised around what we see here as an intention of the schools and what they desire to see in future. So my question is, what collective measures with the Department of Sports and Arts and Culture are in place to ensure the underdeveloped schools have sports and recreation facilities as required by the regulated norms and standards for the public schools? I just want to make an example about the Stradom School, old Stradom secondary school in my constituency in Tabanchu. I know the school management, they have been trying several times to make some intervention because it's an old training college facility there next to that, but it's not fully, utilized to its maximum, capacity. Whereas there has been some refurbishment and been used for other purposes. But over and above that, the old Stradom Secondary School has been trying to make submissions without any success in order to maximize, the functioning of that school, such that it accommodates sports, or in case it does not fit into a class, at least it can be developed into a center of sports training or academic training for pupils and learners. But that they have done it to their, they could not succeed in as far as that is concerned. And there's also one school that I want to make an example about. It's a Kune Primary School in the same constituency. I can see that there's been nice, pictures coming out of this presentation in as far as the progress. Well, we know that, but then we have some similar, school infrastructure in around Tabanshu. I'm making an example about school called Kume Primary School. There, the teachers share the facilities with the, ablution facilities with the school kids, girls. They go in the same direction, using the same toilets. It's quite embarrassing. I'm sure even the snakes have made their space, have created their own space there. But I'll show the pictures via the committee, via the secretary, if you want to see them. Then my third question is, why is there a need to have implementing agents for the SAFE program? Remember, the 2,240 schools have been allocated to implementing agents. What value of money is the department deriving for these implementing agents? And how much has been spent thus far on implementing agents, and how many schools have they completed? My other question is the need for connectivity, and the internet has become critical component of learning. This is further a requirement of the regulated norms and standards for public schools. How many schools, my question, how many schools has the department identified as needing these facilities? What is the department's plan for getting schools located in rural and underdeveloped provinces internet facilities? So my last question is, what incentives are in place for teachers who are employed in schools that have inadequate infrastructure? Evidence suggests that the poor state of infrastructure negatively impacts the morale of teachers. And I forget this one, I must also raise, what is the rate of vacancy in the department? Thank you very much, Chair.
Honorable Kaiso, thank you very much. Let me just check second round. Honorable Mare, anything that you'd like to add to your questions?
Only a remark, sir, if possible.
Yeah, please.
Now, I just want to say, I did note the transfer of money from Mpumalanga and Eastern Cape to the Western Cape. I just want to make the point that it is the province have a responsibility to appoint the right people in their staff within their provinces, as they must appoint the right contractors. So if the minister have to reallocate money to a province that performs, that's the way it should be done. And it could also be reallocated to Gauteng or Northern Cape or even Free State. But that's how it works in life. If a department is not performing in a province, and it's applicable to all the different departments, irrespective of what department it is, it should be reallocated where the performance is. The minister can't have a budget and it is not spent. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mare. Honorable Memezi. Honorable Memezi, do you have any addition to your questions? Honorable Matafa.
Thank you, Chair. No, just one, Chair, and thank you for allowing us to come back. I apologize if maybe the question might be touched on in case that I missed it when I was breaking from the connection. It's just on the issue of youth and people with disabilities accessing the economic activity of the country through the department. Are there any specific measures or strategy that are aimed in achieving their full participation? And we're asking with the full understanding, Chair, that in most cases, the price is a determining factor on which direction a particular contract or tender will take. Just that one, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Matafa. Honorable Lenzane.
No, thanks, Chair. Chair, just to cross-check, you will remind me. When I was talking about this underperformance by Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga, did I ask the department to appraise us of the expenditure trends of all provinces, particularly these two? so that we can know as to how much has been spent by each province. It's just that I'm not sure if it didn't slip when I was talking, Chair. And then the last one, where I said I have passion on school sports. It is just the only one which I can add. What is the collective measures with the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture so as to realize that the underdeveloped schools do have sport and recreation facilities as required by the regulated norms and standards for public schools? It was just that, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Mlenzana. Honorable Taiso.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. The last question that I skipped, I just want to check from the department reported to the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education on 10 May 2022 that there was a backlog of 1,449 schools on the SAFE program. In other words, those that still use pit latrines toilets. However, that is not reported as such in their current presentation before the committee. What is the current backlog? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Taiso. Thank you, honorable members. Let me also join my colleagues.
Chair, you forgot me, ne?
Chair, you forgot our hands.
Oh, okay, okay. Honorable Tobias Kamin. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, we use the chat mostly to raise our hands. I don't think there's anybody who's monitoring the chat. So I suggest that we must monitor the chat. Chair, two of my questions.
Honorable
Chair,
Tobias.
yes,
Sorry,
Chair.
Sorry, before you proceed. Please just feel free to, I always say, you know how we do it. Just feel free to shout at me like you did to get my attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, two of my questions were partly covered, but let me raise it. When school sports was decided many years ago, it was not Comrade Mlenzana made a responsibility of the Department of Sports, much as the Department of Sports needed to budget for that. This has been a neglected activity for a number of years. And now, Chair, I'm raising this because I'm speaking to ourselves now as overseers. Because being an old broom in Parliament, I don't want to ask the same questions without consequences. We have said there need to be consequence management in government departments where action is not taken. And we need to hold those. If budgets are being put and they are not being utilized, let's take the money away or take the leaders to the cleaners. Because in companies, in the corporate environment, if a director or a CEO is not performing, it's either they're going to lose their jobs or they're going to repay the money they earn for the performance contract they've signed. But in government, people go scot-free when they did not implement their work. Perhaps we should change the way we oversee this government department so that consequence management can be taken seriously, because the AG itself has moved away from financial oversight, has moved into performance oversight. As to how we as the Appropriations Committee is going to do the oversight, we will have to zoom in because there's a rents and cent that you appropriate to these departments on a regular basis. It's on those bases that I deal with the first one. The second one is what Comrade Taiso has raised about the issue of pit latrines. On a yearly basis, we lose children who die in these pit latrines. And yet we know that there's a budget that has been committed. I will not be satisfied to just get a flimsy answer on a serious matter that takes life of children, and government is sued for negligence. What has happened in provinces like Limpopo, for instance. So we need to put a time frame as to how and when we're going to get a report that this matter is going to be addressed, because targets have been put on a yearly basis by the Department of Education, but they've not been achieved and consequences has not been realized. So, Chair, I want both us as the Appropriations Committee and this department to get an indication how we're going to deal with this issue by when. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Tobias. Honorable Tlangwini, good morning.
Morning, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair, for indulging my hand. Chair, I remember I raised the issue when National Treasury came and did the presentation, when the minister did the budget, on the infrastructure grant in Eastern Cape that had to go back to National Treasury for the non-spending of that money. And I think the onus is also on the department, on the national department, to also oversee and monitor that these monies are being spent and not sent back to National Treasury. And as my other colleagues have just mentioned, Honorable Tobias mentioned it on the pitlatories. I mean, yearly we are losing children in Eastern Cape, Limpopo, and all of these rural provinces falling into pitlatories. And the onus is really on the department to see to it that these provinces are spending the money the way they need to spend it, and on the programs that they are supposed to spend it. My question also, Chair, is pertaining to the overcrowding. What is the program of the department to see that overcrowding is addressed in our schools? Because overcrowding also have a major factor to the teaching and learning of our kids, number one, and number two, it plays also a role in terms of, you know, kids' mental health and so forth within a classroom. And it can also contribute to violence on the schools. What are the plans and programs in solving that program out? And number two, the teacher aptism in schools. What plans do they have in action to oversee that you know that we for instance, if teachers are not attending to their work, you know, possible steps are being taken, because you can't have a situation where teachers are just sick for the whole year and no active steps are being taken. And we know, yes, it's a person's right and all of that, but kids needs to be taught, and that have a major impact to them, to the quality of education that they will get in progressing to the next grade. And then the last one, Chair, there's a school and I see the rosy pictures, but there's a school even in Upper Dean, and I reported this even when on the budget in Upper Dean, Sarah Bartman, Dr. Bayer's not here, that the parents have closed because of the kids were not, there's no textbooks and also infrastructure of the school. What does the department, national department, is aware about that school? And what is the progress in terms of ensuring that those learners do get the necessary textbooks that they need to get in order for them to pass the exams? And then the last one, Chair, when the department goes into these communities and sort of demolish the school infrastructure and build a new school, those infrastructures stands there as white elephants, and they become crime hotspots and habitat of crime in these infrastructures that are just standing there unguarded and unsafe within our communities. What steps is the department having to ensuring when they are going in and saying this structure it's unsafe, we're gonna put up a new structure or new school, maybe next on the next another piece of land, and then those other the one that is unsafe are just there unattended and are used as crime habitat for criminals to do their activities. So the department needs to give us what is the steps to ensuring that these schools are demolished properly and safely within our communities, so that land can be sort of reworked and reused for other purposes within the communities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Tlangwini. Any other oral member would like to have something?
Person Humphrey Memezi.
Honorable Memezi, please come in.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just the last two points I thought I must raise, in particular affecting the rural provinces, the need for connectivity and the importance of the internet has become a critical component of learning. This is further a requirement of the regulated norms and standards for public schools. Now, the question is, how many schools has the department identified as needing these facilities, in particular in the rural areas? What is the department's plan for getting schools located in the rural and underdeveloped provinces, internet facilities? The last point linked to the same would be the need for incentives for the same areas. Maybe let me put it this way. What incentives are in place for teachers who are employed in schools that have inadequate infrastructure? Evidence suggests that the poor state of infrastructure negatively impact the morale of teachers. So normally it's not attracting teachers. In particular, subjects such as science would need those teachers, and they run away from the rural areas, math and science. So what incentive then is the department focusing on to assist in the rural areas in particular? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Memezi. Any other honorable member would like to have a go? No, thank you. Let me come in. Again, thank you, DG, for the presentation with your team. As you can see that it raises a lot of questions, or perhaps it has made the oral members look into some issues that you have raised yourself and ask questions. So, but thank you very much. It has been useful. Let me, before I ask my questions, also say to DG, for the questions that you can't answer now, please say so, and then we do allow written responses, because we try to avoid what I call convenient answers, just to say I've responded to it. So if it needs a detailed, I had some of the questions which the other members asked, they may need you to respond in writing. We do allow that, but you must indicate to us that on this one, we will be responding in writing. Perhaps Honorable Tobias?
Oh, Chair, I was asking the colleagues whether is it only me losing you or is it happening with everybody?
Can you hear me, honorable members?
I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. No. So I think one of the things that you would have heard, that literally all the oral members who have spoken have touched on it. It's the question of inappropriate pit latrines. I just want, it embarrasses the government and all of us who are involved in this thing, in allocation of money, where we seem not to have our hands on this thing and solve it once and for all. Even before our kids die there, just the indignity of those places. I went to one school, DG, in my constituency in Moy River, where the teacher said to me, look, what we do here, it's a primary school. As a result, we've got a pit latrine. So these young ones, whenever they go to toilet, a teacher must accompany them, because the teachers are trying to prevent the disasters that we were always seeing. And then here we are here as this committee to appropriate about 2.2 trillion rand per annum. But we seem not to be able to solve this very small thing just to get the safety of our kids. So DG, I think if there's one thing of all the other things that we would like you to come back and report in about 6 months' time to say what has happened now on these inappropriate pit latrines. I think it's one thing that our people would really celebrate if we were to go out, all of us, say that we have dealt with this one once and for all. I think it's a question of me just trying to stress an issue which has already been raised by the honorable members. Then my first question then will be, the president announced the economic reconstruction and recovery plan, right? As a way of trying to grow the economy and create employment. Can you share with the committee the initiatives and your contribution towards the realization of this program? I don't need to say why is it so important. It's self-explanatory that most of the problems that we're having in our country, it's because of the economy which is not working. So we identified the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan as our savior in trying to deal with many of the problems and ensuring that you even get more allocations from your side. So let me also congratulate you on the ECDG. But the question coming from that would be, what is its geographical reach? My interest is more of its penetration in the rural areas. Are you able to perhaps to give us some indication as to how far you have gone as far as rolling out ECDG in the rural areas? My next question, on the procurement, you are saying 64% of procurement went, or government spend went to blacks. Are you saying that white people didn't get any work from the department because you then categorize and so on? Just clarify that one for us. The 90-10 rule, again, which is not you are making, is the act which is there. But I just want you to confirm that if you ignore all the BBBE requirements and you quote the lowest price, we are assured of 90% of scoring. Am I correct? Something I wanted to raise again on on procurement. Perhaps while I'm busy with that other one. On electricity is a general question, DG. Just repeat for me how many schools were electrified since 1994, 1996, and how many must we still electrify? You also speak about the relationship that you are having with ESCOM, or perhaps the relationship helped you to electrify a lot of skills. Can you share with us that type of relationship? Generally, another question related to that one is that we are facing load shedding in the country. I just want to check from your side, your side. How does that affect your delivery on your mandate, the load shedding? It's quite a broad question, but please share with the committee. The inverse of this question is how important electricity is in your sector. Another question, how big is the problem of vandalization in our schools? I think I still have got one more question. Yeah, again, is related to procurement. While price is still the major determinant of awarding tenders and contracts, how is the department promoting localization and local economic development, especially considering the commodities like stationery, textbooks, classroom furniture, and other learner-teacher support material procured by the department and the sector? I think, DG, you got my questions and the questions of the oral members. Can I then allow you and the team? I'm taking that the minister is still not on the platform. If minister, we are there, then you
No,
start.
Chair, I am on the platform.
Oh, okay. Good day, minister, and welcome. We did receive the apology before we started, so I'll hand over to you and your team, and then after all the questions and the issues have been responded to, the meeting will be brought back to me. But to you, Honorable Minister.
No, thank you very much, Chair. And again, sincere apologies that we had a cabinet committee and we had a where to present, and cabinet does not accept presentations not done by the line department. So that's why I had to apologize. So I'm sincerely apologetic, but we was quite familiar with the document that was to be presented and had gone through it with the department. So I'm quite familiar with the issues. What will be a problem, Chair? I joined only when you were raising issues, and I don't want to really answer questions that I would not have, or say things that I would not have been able to listen to. So I'll ask DG to respond. I've taken notes from your questions, and I can only respond to those after DG has responded only on the questions that you raised. I've not been able to hear other questions, but thank you very much for accepting my apology, Chair.
Perfect.
Chair, am I allowed to proceed? Okay.
Please, DG. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Just to show my face again, Chair. Our network is a bit vulnerable. If you allow me, after showing my face, just to switch the video off so that it doesn't impair the communication from my side to you, Chair. Is that okay?
Please proceed, DG.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Once more, thank you for the comments and the questions. We really appreciate them. You are an important oversight structure of Parliament. We gauge ourselves in terms of performance also from your observations and the reflections that you are making, apart from the fact that if you do not approve that we get the necessary appropriation, the department will not be able to get it. So thank you very much on that note to all honorable members who've made comments and those who couldn't. We really appreciate. Chair, I'm going to start with the comments of Honorable Mare, and thank you also for allowing us to come back on those that will indicate that we are unable to provide answers at the moment, and we'll do that speedily in terms of the timeframes that you'll give to us. The issue of underspending of the 300 million that Honorable Mare referred to, I'm going to request the CFO to respond specifically to that. Just to explain the issue of the rollover. The rollover, as the Chief Financial Officer attempted to explain, what actually happened is that with workbooks, the work has been done, but unfortunately, the invoices could not be processed, all of them, before year end. So children have got workbooks with them. They have received them, they've used them. We even have an independent means to verify whether schools have received these workbooks. And that forms part of the annual audit that we are doing. With respect to construction work, what also happened is that some implementing agents were sitting with invoices that could not be processed because we ran out of cash flow, whilst some implementing agents did not fully utilize. We transfer money to implementing agents in tranches. And I'm sure Mr. Kuno, the CFO, would explain how we do that. And that's how some of the money could not be spent. But actually, if you look at the value of invoices, money that was required would have been more than what we had. I think that's the point that I want to explain there. Spending on education infrastructure grant, Mr. Mafuku is on the platform. He'll give a blow by blow from Eastern Cape to Western Cape, how all provinces have spent. I'll come back to the issue of taking money from one province to the other and just indicate that even after taking money from Eastern Cape and even Mpumalanga and Eastern Cape in particular, they could not spend all their money. And I accept what Honorable Tobias said. I fully agree. In fact, that's what the minister is reminding us about all the time, that the underperformance of provinces is also a reflection on our monitoring and support to provinces. But I've also said to the minister and deputy minister, we're holding monthly meetings with these provinces. Some of them, you'd appreciate that they have improved, including Eastern Cape. Eastern Cape in 2021, 2022, they lost 200 million, which we redirected elsewhere. In the 2022, 2023, they lost 100 million. In 2023, 2024, we don't want them to lose anything. Mpumalanga had peculiar challenges. They lost about 3 of their key infrastructure practitioners. I think 2 directors and a chief director, if I'm not mistaken. They resigned and left. And that created a major vacuum in getting infrastructure projects implemented. And that is attributable in the main for the underperformance of Mpumalanga. They've reappointed, they've got directors. We told them that starting the new financial year, we don't want any province to underperform. But Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, I must also say, sometimes you are also constrained by the nature of personnel that is appointed in provinces because we could not say, we can't control them. In some instances, you find that we don't get actually the right people to do the job. I want to be woefully honest, like somebody who's about to die. And the issue I've raised with the minister and deputy minister, and they are taking it up with MECs as well, that let's have the right people in these positions, because infrastructure, you need people with the requisite knowledge and skills to do it. Otherwise, we'll sit with perpetual underperformance that we've seen in some provinces and areas. The blacklisting of contractors, Mr. van der Westhuizen in his presentation indicated what we have started to do, not only contractors, even your consultants, what we called professional services, service providers, the PSPs. We're also looking at reporting them, not only to Treasury, but to report them to bodies where they are registered, so that action is taken. Consequence management must also happen at that level. Implementing agents, those that did not perform as expected, we are no longer allocating projects to them. KZN, for instance, is also imposing penalties of a certain amount of the management fee that is paid to the implementing agent is taken away from them and used to further build schools or renovate schools through a different means other than that implementing agent. So we're really getting tough with consequence management when it comes to even contractors, consultants, and even service providers. Mr. van der Westhuizen can elaborate more in terms of the list that he has received for submission at National Treasury for blacklisting. Allocation of unspent money. The only rationale for that, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, and our own minister and MECs of the affected provinces, including the Premier of the Eastern Cape, Minister would recall that, who even went to report, even complained to the President that we have taken money from a poor province, exactly as Honorable Menezi has explained. I can't, counter the analysis that he has made. But the rationale for that is to keep that money within the sector. Because if we lose it within the sector, and we know that there are pressing needs elsewhere, and if we lose that money, we won't get it anymore to address the ever-increasing needs in the sector. That's the rationale. It's not about punishing those provinces, but I do accept that we have a role as Honorable Tobias indicated. And then the issue of the reasons for the decline in the initial numbers, whether it's inappropriate structures or it's schools with pit latrines, the explanation that we provided is that it's because of merger and closure. We're merging and closing schools. Yesterday, we're in KZN. They indicated that they are merging and closing over 1,500 schools. These are schools in the rural areas. If you don't merge and close them, over time, they close themselves, learners moving away. Areas that are getting depopulated because people are going to areas of economic need or economic activity to go and get employment there and move away from particularly your rural areas. So many of those schools got merged and closed. And that's why the original numbers, for instance, inappropriate for 510 that we initially had got reduced. The same applies to pit latrines. When the president launched the project, the SAFE program in 2018, we had over 3,000 of those schools. As I speak now, processes to merge and close those schools are still going on. That's the reason for the decline. But Mr. van der Westhuizen will also add there. So I've given the explanation for reasons for both pit latrines and inappropriate structures. But Chair, I must also add, with the unprecedented adverse conditions that we have seen, weather conditions that we have seen in many parts of the country, schools that were community built, the majority of which were built of mud, are beginning to crumble. And that's why, I mean, initially you had identified 510, and over time, some of the schools that are beginning to crumble, then they get added to the old list, or we start getting a new list of schools, which makes, the list that we have a bit unreliable. So the adverse conditions have also contributed to this factor. When people do condition assessment at first time when they went out to do condition assessment, those structures were intact. Over time, when they go there, the structures are just collapsing and they require urgent attention. And then I'll proceed to Honorable Matafa. Yes, it would be great if you could join us, Honorable Matafa. It's not only fulfilling in terms of one's career. In education, you wait for 12 years to see results. But in construction, you can see results within 3 to 6 months, whilst you are waiting for your 12 years. That's the pleasant part about getting involved in infrastructure, but also getting to understand the dynamics and the challenges out there. Honorable Chair, I must say that we got tired that every time we come to you and other oversight structures of Parliament, we complain about contractors, we complain about implementing agents. We just decided that no, this time around we have to go out, and we've been doing this for 2 years. And I think it's what we need to continue to do, because I'll show in responding to some of the questions what impact this has eventually brought about. And then the schools without water, I know that the data that we have from provinces would say we don't have schools without water. We had a 2 days workshop with provinces. I also raised the issue of consumable clean water, clean and safe water. The majority of the people in the rural areas depend on rain harvested water. It really moved one's heart to see them just using harvested rainwater from the roofs of the buildings, and some of the roofs of the buildings are roofed of asbestos material, which is dangerous, which was a matter of concern as we were moving around from one school to the other, that we did not think that the water that schools, teachers, and communities were using was safe. And we said there is a need to treat that water and bring in experts to make sure that water is safe. Because when you put out a questionnaire and say, how many schools don't have water? They would count in schools that don't have safe, consumable water as part of those schools that have water. So I've also said that in future we need to specify over and above just water to do other things like irrigation and so on. We should focus on water that is safe and consumable for teachers and learners in our communities. So that's relationship. Let me see. No, I'm still on Honorable Matafa. That's about slide number 39, Honorable Matafa, but Mr. van der Westhuizen will also add. Completed projects, Mr. van der Westhuizen has got the slide. He will indicate how many projects are completed in appropriate structures as well as pit latrines. That's why we talk about 700 that are implemented in 2023-2024 financial year. And then how many schools are without electricity? The presentation will say none. And let me also talk about, but that's the information that we have from provinces. At the moment, there's no school. And the excellent relationship, Honorable Chair, that we have with ESCOM is that in our weekly meeting, there is a dedicated senior official from ESCOM who sits on our forum and who would pick up any issue that relates to delay, to rollout of infrastructure closest to where schools are so that we are able to just connect. And it's been an excellent relationship. We've never battled at any moment in time with getting ESCOM's assistance in this regard in terms of connecting schools. I must say, we can blame them for other things such as load shedding, but in terms of getting us to get the infrastructure rolled out closer to where schools are so that we're able to connect, we've never experienced any problems. Other sources of energy that we're considering, yes, we do, Honorable Chair. We're looking at solar. We are affected, I must say, by load shedding. In terms of teaching, there are specific subjects which are heavily dependent on the availability of electricity, such as computer application technology subject, as well as information technology subjects, including technical subjects where you use machines in the labs of your technical high schools, which depend on the availability of electricity. Schools have tried to improvise to buy generators, but we also, as part of the 2 days workshop, looked at the alternative energy that we need to deploy to schools. The other area is when we are writing exams and when marking has got to happen for grade 12 learners, we get adversely affected by load shedding. We've been trying to work around it as the minister instructed us to do, but we do have those challenges. Schools affected by floods and progress, Mr. Mafuku will provide information there. Data provided by PEDs. Indeed, for instance, we thought that we don't have inappropriate sanitation facilities in Mpumalanga. And when the media picked this up in Mpumalanga, then the officials in Mpumalanga said to us, yes, we do have appropriate and safe sanitation facilities, but side by side those, we still have your basic pit latrines. And we've requested all provinces to prioritize demolition of inappropriate, unsafe pit latrines, because the demise of this learner, particularly in the Eastern Cape in recent times, we were told that it was not in the new toilet facilities that we have built, but I'm sure the minister can also say something on that one. The deputy minister went there to do an in-loco inspection after that incident happened, and she gave us the facts around what happened there. But we want to demolish all inappropriate and unsafe structures, especially in instances where new pit latrines that are safe and appropriate have been built. We said provinces must make sure that this financial year, we bring that behind us. And of course, the data that we have now, it's that we are left with the 700 that we have presented to you, Chair, and honorable members, but we're still going to see tomorrow for validation. In the 2 days workshop, I said to all the 9 provinces, is there any province that still has these dangerous pit latrines? Because we want to deal with them as DBE. We have an allocation for it. We want to make sure that 2023, 2024 is the final year for all these dangerous pit latrines. Amnesty International, yes, indeed, Honorable Matter. I've heard them saying so, but I wonder what is the source of their data. We do meet with Equal Education, Section 27, Human Rights Commission. We invite everybody to share our data with them. The figures that Amnesty International quoted, I don't know where they got that. It's not from our sources of data. And we dispute those figures that they put out there. And we put out statements. We had a very extensive media briefing, which was led by the minister. We've put out our figures. They've never been disputed by anyone. Equal Education and Section 24 encouraged us to put this out for the public to know, because we had rich information that the public should be aware of. That's what they did. We had a workshop with them and we took them through our figures as well. And then the conditional grant for learner transport, we've been discussing that. The difficulty is that some function still lies with the Department of Transport until we successfully persuade provincial executive councils of provinces where learner transport is still located with the Department of Transport, National Treasury is unable to assist us with considering a conditional grant in this area. Would appreciate, Honorable Chair, if we could get assistance from your side as well, because provincial executive do have that prerogative to decide where the function should go. We've been appealing to provinces to say that it can best serve education when it's located within the education line function. Strategies to enhance youth participation. We are working with the Department of Sports and Recreation. We have a memorandum of agreement. I think the major issue is to extend interaction with local municipalities who are actually the custodians of these facilities that are referred to. It's an issue that we are taking up in the forum of heads of education, and we'll keep giving feedback to you on how we will encourage even HODs to have one-on-one meetings with municipalities to make these facilities available to our young people so that it encourages maximum participation for them. And then Honorable Menzana, a relationship between provincial treasuries of Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga. I only had an opportunity to engage twice with the provincial treasury of the Eastern Cape, simply because of some hurdles that the Eastern Cape Department of Education was experiencing in accessing their funds, particularly around infrastructure. But I have explained the reasons as to why we move money and reappropriate it to where the needs are, both in terms of Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga. I'm extremely optimistic that this financial year we should get those two provinces to perform much better than they did in the previous year. And I've explained the rationale behind, making sure that this money remains within the sector. I agree with the analogy that says you take from the poor to the rich, and then the strong become stronger and the weak become weaker. It's a precise, characterization of the challenge. But I've also explained as to what we are doing to make sure that we improve from this situation. Infrastructure, construction of the two provinces, and I'm sure Mr. Mafuku can say something because he's been the main person in terms of EIG, looking at all the 9 provinces, particularly in Mpumalanga and Eastern Cape. And then the school name Gezwa will follow up the issue of LTSM and make sure that we address that. The breakdown of infrastructure in terms of library, media centers, and infrastructure in these provinces. I don't think we have that at the moment. Honorable Chair will provide that to you as soon as we're able to put it together. But if colleagues do have that information, they can provide it. But I think it would still be best to give it to you for all the 9 provinces. And then expenditure trends of PEDs, and in particular Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga, Mr. Mafuku will provide that information. The need for connectivity, how many schools will get internet services, will provide this information. Cabinet has taken a decision that the Department of Communication and Digital Technology will be working with us to roll out connectivity in 17,000 schools, which will virtually means that all our schools will then be connected. We'll share that plan with your honorable committee chair. Our plan, which was approved by Cabinet together with the Department of Communication and Digital Technology. I agree also that if the infrastructure is not appropriate, is demoralizing not only to educators and learners, It doesn't provide a conducive environment for learning. That's the view of the minister. It's about the dignity of everyone in a facility of that nature. Honorable Kwaiso, what collective measures are in place between sports, arts and culture and us to facilitate access and participation of learners in facilities? And Honorable Kwaisa mentioned Tabanchu, where he comes from, his constituency, and the Kune Primary School in Tabanchu, which does not have appropriate facilities, will follow this school up and work with the Free State. We've also been monitoring them. They've been part of our implementing agents. So we'll follow this matter up. What value are we deriving from implementing agents? They are managing the delivery of the projects on our behalf. They select and appoint contractors and make sure that projects are delivered as determined by us in terms of timeframes. We do get value in some of them, in others we don't get value. The minister has even encouraged us to open up the door to get even more, because some of them are overloaded, some of them are not fully functional, and we pay a management fee to them, and Mr. van der Westhuizen can explain this. And that's why in the presentation that Mr. van der Westhuizen made, he said, we need to reduce the over-reliance on implementing agents. The schools that are connected will provide information on that. I agree with the issue of poor infrastructure, which demoralizes both teachers and learners, which comes up again. The vacancy rate in the department, Mr. Kuno will provide that. I'm sure he should have it offhand. Current backlog of pit latrines is the 700 that we have, but Mr. van der Westhuizen can also add in this one. Honorable Tobias, consequence management, I've spoken about what consequence management you are implementing to implementing agents, to consultants, including our own employees. There is action that we take against. And the slides that Ms. Ramohapi shared with you were things we were not happy about. Implementing agents are instructed to go back together with contractors to correct. And they've been able to come back, give us a report and say, the situation when you went there, after we intervene, here is the situation. They give us those pictures there. And we use infrastructure practitioners in districts to go and verify whether what they are telling us is true. So that's how we are dealing with this. Okay, and then Honorable Ntlagwini, the National Department has a role to play in making sure that provinces spend their allocation. I said I fully agree, and we're meeting with provinces every month to monitor them. And we even redirect them to the meeting of the minister. Those that are grossly underperforming, they appear before the minister and the deputy minister. And we have encouraged provinces to heighten accountability, MECs and HODs in the provinces as well, so that we deal with underperformance and we heighten consequence management. And then programs to address overcrowding. We've come up with a program, which is the initiative of the minister, which we call SIPOS. Essentially, we need to accelerate measures to address overcrowding. And we've employed provinces through the EIG and through the SIBG, School Infrastructure Backlog Grant. We're also dealing with overcrowding, building classrooms, and building even additional schools to ease the backlog from the neighboring schools. But we are working with National Treasury, coming up even with other measures like BFI, the budget facility for infrastructure, to address the challenge of overcrowding. It is unprecedented. Everywhere you go, you do come across overcrowding, and the sentiments expressed by honorable members, I fully agree with. And then the school in Sarah Bartman, where learners do not have textbooks and the school came to a halt, will follow up that matter with the province. The demolition of structures. When we demolish structures, we make sure that they are safe, and we make sure that the area where the old structure was located is rehabilitated for use, for garden and other things. We encourage schools to utilize that for that, but we make sure that those structures are safe. Maybe the honorable member could refer to schools that are no longer in use. We should be working with the Department of Public Works, because government assets belong to Public Works, for Public Works to reallocate such facilities to other departments or other spheres of government for use, instead of becoming the hive of crime, as the honorable member observed. But we'll raise this with provinces as well. Chair, I'm almost done. Coming to your own questions and comments, inappropriate structures, I fully agree with your observation that this is an embarrassment to government. We're trying our best. That's why all of us are out to really make sure that if there's anything that has to form part of our history that does not follow us into the future, is these dangerous basic pit latrines, we replace them with sanitation facilities that are appropriate. We are doing our best to make sure that that happens. We've reduced them substantially. You go to any locality. I was even saying to Minister, in terms of delivering sanitation facilities, we beat even Coca-Cola. We go to areas where you don't find Coca-Cola. We go to the deep areas, to the deep rural areas of the 9 provinces to make sure that we deliver these facilities there. Honorable Chair, we will definitely come back to you in 6 months to come and give you the status of dangerous pit latrines vis-a-vis the replacement of these pit latrines. We'll definitely come back to you. Our contribution to the reconstruction and recovery plan, the first one is through the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative, where we've been able to ensure the employment of 300,000 young people across our country. The challenge is that schools and communities are pleading that these young people that are now in schools should not be removed anymore. It should become a permanent feature of our schools. Teachers were relieved of administrative responsibilities. They were able to focus on teaching and learning. Infrastructure is one of those, but we'll also forward to you a list of areas. There were about 5 areas that we had identified to contribute to the reconstruction and recovery program of government. The rollout of ECD will also provide you with information. The line function manager is not part of this meeting. Will provide you with information in this regard, how far we have gone, and I'm sure the minister might want to comment on that as well. Broad-based economic empowerment, Mr. Kuno will respond to the specific areas that you indicated. Does it mean that there are no white people? There are white people who would have benefited. We're focusing on designated groups in terms of the areas that we are reporting on, but Mr. Kuno can provide more information here. Schools electrified since 1994. Mr. van der Westhuizen will provide the exact figures, which are part of the presentation. I've indicated how load shedding is affecting us. Vandalism is a big, big problem. It's reversing gains that we have made in infrastructure rollout in basic education. It's a big, big problem, Chair. I don't know how to explain it. After every break of schools, there's untold numbers of schools that are reporting vandalism of a very huge magnitude. So it's a big problem. Promotion of localization and local economic development. Mr. Kuno can also just explain that, I mean, provide information in that respect. Chair, I've responded to those that I could. If you allow me to just request, maybe first Mr. Kuno, the CFO, then Mr. van der Westhuizen, and probably the minister could come right at the end. If that is in order, Chair.
That's perfect, DG.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Kuno?
Thank you, DG. Thank you, Chair. On the issue of expenditure, the Honorable Marais wanted to know what is the actual amount not spent for infrastructure is 179 million, 179.7, but the total amount for the department is 266 million. When I presented, I did indicate that the figures we were presenting were preliminary. Since we submitted this presentation, we've come up with finalized figures, and our spending has moved up to 99.1%. And then the other question was how much of these were invoices from service providers. We're still collating that information. We don't want to give incomplete information. But out of the rollover that we've applied for of 246 million, 130 million thereof is from infrastructure. It's basically the RCD version. Then what is the rollover in the last 3 years? In 2021-22, that is last year, we did not apply for any rollover because we had spent almost 100% of our budget. We spent 99.75%, so we underspent by 0.25%. But in the previous year, 2020-21, we had applied for a rollover of 222 million. 210 million of that was RCD, and we got approval for that 210 million. In 2019-20, we applied for a rollover of 498 million. RCD was 494 million, and then the balance was goods and services. Then there was a question as well from Honorable Marais. Percentage performance per province on EIG. The provinces performed as follows. Out of a budget of 12.5 billion of EIG, provinces spent 99.4%, which is 12.4 billion thereof. And then the percentage spending per province is as follows. Eastern Cape, 111.5%. Free State, 85%. Gauteng, 99.9%. KZN, 100%. Limpopo, 112.8%. Mpumalanga, 104.8%. Northern Cape, 101%. Northwest, 73%, and Western Cape, 100%. Where provinces would have spent more than the 100%, or where provincial education departments would have spent more than 100%, the excess would be funded from their provincial budgets. So basically, for all intents and purposes, for our purposes, they would have spent 100%, but the excess spending is money that they would have gotten from within their provinces. There's a question as well from Honorable Kwaiso. You say how much has been spent on IAs? We would have to go back and collate that information because, for example, within the national department, we appoint IAs directly on the schools infrastructure backlogs grant, which is a 2.4 billion budget. But then we also have this 12 billion budget, which we transfer to provinces for EIG. So it wouldn't be a true reflection if we just show how much we've spent on IAs on the 2 billion. So we'll have to go back and collate that information for provinces as well. And although Honorable Kwaiso didn't indicate how far back we should go, maybe a fair assessment would be to go maybe 3 years back for the last 3 years. But that's information that we will go back, Chair, and deal with. Rate of vacancy. Our vacancy rate, Chair, is as follows. The total vacancy rate for the department is 9.06%, meaning we filled posts to a percentage of 91.94%. That is the total. But when we break it down per SMS, meaning director upwards. The vacancy rate there is 9.78%. For MMS, meaning level 11 and 12, deputy directors, assistant deputy directors, the percentage is 16.05. And for levels 10 and below, the percentage is 1.03%. So the average percentage vacancy rate is 9.06. Are we saying white people didn't get anything? On the presentation, we've shown, Chair, that we will have youth, we will have women. This information intersects. I don't know how to explain it. If we say we've given 64% to blacks, it doesn't necessarily mean that because we say youth and the rest is 36%, there's nothing to whites, because within the youth and within the other categories, one would find whites. But let me also say, Chair, that we will also go back, because this information is work in progress, we must admit. We'll also go back and collate more the information more clinically to even go at implementing agents and put that information together. To also go onto information that doesn't go necessarily through our logis system, our procurement system, such that within that period that the Chair has indicated, we should be able to submit a more comprehensive report on that. On the 90-10, Chair, I think you are spot on, Chair. If in the event where the 10% for triple BEE or the 20% for triple BEE, it doesn't come into the picture, if we're just using the 90% or the 80%, that basically means that the 90% is for price, as well as 80% on the other side is for price. So a person who has got the lowest price gets the highest points. So because you get the highest points, you will get the bid. So you are spot on, Chair. But just to explain further, Chair, to say the 10% is to try and say previously disadvantaged people would not have the muscle to bid at lower prices, whereas previously advantaged people, if I may use that, would have the muscle to bid for to give lower prices when they bid. That's why they would get the 90% ordinarily or the 80% ordinarily. Now, the triple BE points or the 10 and the 20% is meant to narrow that gap, to say if you are previously disadvantaged and you gave us a price of 80 rands, whereas I mean of 90 rands, whereas a previously advantaged person gave 80 rands, then we would give you points under the 20, for example, such that you would get more points if it's possible. So I hope I've answered that, Chair. Thank you, DG. I'll hand over back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuno. Mr. van der Westhuizen, please.
Thank you, DG. I'm going to switch off my video again. Just, I think a lot of the questions you've responded to, I just want to give the honourable members just some comfort in terms of the figures. So if we look at our CD, for instance, on inappropriate structures, that is where we provided complete new schools to replace schools that were made entirely. So the 332 schools that was identified in 2011, we have already completed 330 of those. Similarly, on water supply, we said that out of 1,306 schools on the ACD program, those are schools that was identified as schools with no source of water. We have completed 1,292 of those, which leaves us with the 40 remaining as reported. Similarly, on sanitation, at that point in time, we ended up with 1,087 schools that was reported as no toilets. We have done all of them except the 2 schools that are currently in construction. So that is on the ACD program. This does not include the progress made by the provinces. Like I say, we are dealing with a 2.5 billion program on the schools backlog grant under ACD and SAFE. The provinces works with something significantly more than that. The provincial allocation is closer to the order of 13 billion per year. So it's like 10 times, 5 times what we are dealing with. If we look at just on SAFE, just to give them numbers as well, there was a question about the implementing agents. We can have all these numbers for ACD as well as for SAFE. We can give you the numbers per province, per sub-program, and per specific implementing agent. So if the members are interested in that, we can, for instance, say out of the 330 schools built under the ACD program, who built them? How many of those were under DBSA? How many of them were built by the IDT or Kugo Development Corporation? Even DBE ourselves built about 30 odd of those. So those breakdown of figures are available. I think the other questions were very much related to, there were 2 things that I want to refer to, Mr. Mafoko. The one is the details on the EIG, and then also all those questions related to the norms and standards. So Mr. Mafoko, if I can ask you just to relate back to those questions. I think it's the EIG, the flood damage, and then the norms and standards. And yeah, I think those are the ones that I want to ask you to respond. Thanks.
Thank you, David, and with the permission of Chair, DG and Minister. I think CFO have responded to the expenditure on the education infrastructure grant. I will talk to the provision of libraries, laboratories, and sporting facilities. We will provide the detail in terms of how many of those libraries and laboratories and sporting facilities have been provided per province. But just to indicate that in terms of the norms and standards, after the promulgation of the norms and standards, all new and replacement schools are being provided with these facilities. However, as DG has given direction, we have to be honest. in terms of libraries and laboratories, especially with existing schools, we are not doing that well. However, if you look at the timelines in terms of the norms and standards, the provision of libraries and laboratories and sporting facilities schools have to be provided with those in line with the NDP, which is the timeline, which is 2030. So we still are within the timelines as per the norms and standards in terms of providing those, but we will provide the details in terms of where we are at the moment. Also, in terms of sporting facilities, we need to indicate that with regard to sports, where there is space available, sporting facilities are provided. However, the norms and standards go on also to say a school may make use of sporting and recreational facilities of another school or facilities of the local community, if it is not possible to provide those facilities to those schools. Secondly, with regards to internet and connectivity, our colleagues in the ICT Directorate provided us with this information quickly, that the NDG provided some response to this, but the response that we received from our colleagues is that the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services is responsible for providing public schools with internet connectivity. At this stage, 18,519 schools, which is 79.84% of our public schools, have access to various forms of connectivity, such as satellite, broadband, as well as 3G and LTE. It should also be noted that some schools were provided with connectivity as part of the universal service access obligations that were imposed on the mobile network operators by ICASA and the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services. Now, with regards to the disasters,
Sorry, hold just a second. Honorable members, just check your gadgets and are muted. Please. Thank you. Continue.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. With regards to disasters, the question was also referring to what is the effect of those disasters in schools. Just to indicate to honorable members and Chair that when these disasters occur, all provinces have got contingency measures to provide mobile classrooms to those schools to ensure that teaching and learning is not adversely affected, whilst processes of rehabilitating those schools that have been affected by disasters are being put in place. At this stage, the information that we have, there are 3 provinces that were affected. It is Eastern Cape, KZN, and Northwest. And in total, there are 414 schools that are still in the process of rehabilitation, and a budget of 317 million has been allocated to these 3 provinces for purposes of the rehabilitation of schools that have been affected by disasters. I think those are the questions that I have to refer to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I also just make an undertaking to Honorable Mlenzana about Lutatini High School in Alfred Nzo West District in the Eastern Cape, that will follow up that matter about the building of that school, and then hand over to the Honorable Minister. Minister?
No, thank you very much, DG, and thank you very much, Chair. I don't have much to add. There's just a question that the Chair had raised when I was here around procurement of furniture and books, and want to remind the meeting that basically as national education, as national department, we don't buy on behalf of provinces unless it's a special project. So things like furniture, books, they'll be procured by provinces as a function of the provinces. We get involved in ASIDI, in SAFE,
and workbooks as special projects. We normally don't buy. The other matter I thought also I should respond, though, the HOD, the DG had responded to it because, Chair, it had become a very serious political matter. As the DG explained, it even went to the presidency about taking money from other provinces to the other. And just to illustrate, for instance, in Eastern Cape in particular, as the DG said the year before, Chair, we took 200 and they said the money is committed. And by Q1, they were still at 9%. Because if that money was committed by Q1, they were supposed to have been spending. Q2, they were only at 11 or 15%. That's when we sent officials weekly to Eastern Cape to say, let's go and assist this province, because we had already taken money the previous year, and the risk is that this year we're even going to take more. And I think as members will appreciate, it's really a province that needs all the money. We went there weekly, Q2 and Q3. And had we not gone there, they would not have even been able to spend half of the money. And when I spoke to DG to say, DG, we can't take money from poor provinces and give them to other provinces. And the officials were saying to me, Minister, these people have not been able to spend 500 million in 9 months. How are they going to spend it in 2 weeks before we close the term? So even after we'd taken the money, they had still not been able to do it. The same thing with Mpumalanga. When they lost staff, we're monitoring. We said to them, we advised them on using consultants. In the meantime, they're filling in posts. They didn't take up the advice. In Northwest, I personally went to Northwest, sat with the MEC for the whole day, and the reports I was getting on an ongoing basis, Chair, because we have these weekly meetings, was that we will agree with Northwest what needs to be done. When you turn your back, that doesn't happen. And as I say, we're constrained by the concurrence to say that things we can't do without the concurrence of provinces, especially when the money is within the province. So they have to sign in some instances. So you can't just even take over and do things to assist them if you find that they're struggling. But indeed, even this week, tomorrow, we're going to Cape Town to have a workshop also on infrastructure, because I could feel the pain, Chair, that you have even about pit latrines and other things, and just deteriorate infrastructure in provinces. And we are equally concerned, and that's why, as on a weekly basis, we try to push as much as we can. It takes sometimes a lot of our time from teaching and learning just to get provinces to move, but also our implementing agents also to do what we do, because we engage them because we want them to assist us, but now we end up supervising them. And that's why, as I say, we hope that maybe after tomorrow's workshop, something will give. And appreciate, I think, the concerns that, Chair, you have. It's our concern also. It's very humiliating and embarrassing to go into a school and find them in that state, to just feel like just completely asking too much from principals. So Chair, it is a big problem. It is a serious challenge, and we're doing everything in our powers to make sure that we get assistance. And Treasury is also very keen, and it really assists us a lot. The President raises the matters we raise on an ongoing basis. And the other capable provinces, I don't say others are not incapable. Your Gauteng, your Western Cape, you sit down, you advise them, they move, Chair. You sit with them, they're innovative. You share with others the innovation that is done in other provinces, because that's the advantage we have as national. Sometimes it's not taken up. But I do hope that after our workshop tomorrow, we will be able to give you a different picture. But as the DG is saying, anytime you can call us back, we will be able to answer some of or give you information that we're not able to give to you. But thank you very much for the opportunity, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Lenzana, you have a burning question? Honorable Lenzana?
Chair, also note me, please.
No, I'll come to you, Honorable Tobias. I saw your message. Honorable Lenzana?
No,
Okay.
thanks, Chairperson. Thanks, Chairperson. The DG is saying he's going to make a follow-up. However, DG, you make the follow-up, I hope that you will link up with Darren, our secretary, because I would love that this be escalated, looking at the number of terms and years that that project has been promised. It's only that I can say, because the DG is saying they're going to make a follow-up. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Nzana. Honorable Tobias, please come in.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity. And let me upfront say to the Minister, this might be putting you in the spot, but that's not the intention. There's two policy matters that needs to be attended to, and I cannot prescribe for your good self as you belong to the executive. The first one is that of the concurrence function of provinces, which are delaying the implementation of government strategies and program, pitting against those who oppose the ruling party to think that there is a failure on behalf of the executives at the national when they have drawn good strategic plans, but the concurrence function is limiting the ministers to achieve their strategic goals. And I'm not going to prescribe, but to say, insist on discussing this and its impact on delivery of services, so that if it means that needs to be changed, so that the central government can take responsibilities of the funds that are allocated to provinces in terms of how they are utilized. And I'm raising this because Mr. Mafuko says that in terms of implementation, you are still within a good time frame. I've heard that story on many occasions where officials will say, no, if you could not implement in the first quarter, we still have 3 more quarters. But when you arrive at the third quarter, they still give you the same percentage terms where you can see clearly that they're not going to achieve. And you wait until when you get the annual report to realize that you have actually allowed mediocrity of accepting that people can wait until the last day to implement. It can't be the case. It means there are quarterly targets, and quarterly targets must be met. If they are not met, explanations must be clear so that there is consequence management. Because it is at that point where we miss it, where officials tell us, no, we'll try and recover in the next quarter. And it has never happened. So I used to be a person who paid much attention to that because I've observed it. The second issue, it's when the issue that Mr. Humphrey Memezi has raised about internet becomes a responsibility of other institutions and departments. And that should not be, I know it's a policy issue that needs to be taken and allocations be made. If you are serious about the 4th industrial revolution in the 21st century, you can't still have schools that does not have access to internet or children that does not have access to laptops. If you want them to keep up with the Western world that always challenges our intellectual properties and capabilities, and they've always been at the forefront of research and development, and we invest less in that. I don't want the minister to say anything at this juncture, because I'm not saying you must commit yourself, but if you agree with me on that instance, you might say something that in future might remedy the situation, especially in the far-flung areas, because we have seen countries like China. What is termed as a rural areas got every instrument and facility to make the economy of that country to succeed. And we should be able to learn from such. How do they do it? And Minister, I know you very well by now. I've had an opportunity to work with you. I believe in you, in what you said needs to be done. But I humbly request your good self to look at the officials who must do these follow-ups, so that they don't constrain you as an individual to do that work, and closely look at the type of reports they give you on a quarterly basis. Then you will know whether people are doing that work or not. And I also insist on school sport, that it shouldn't be a responsibility of other departments. But let's take up this matter, because I can tell you, we'll produce excellent sports women and men if we pay attention to school sports. Leave alone township sports that the Department of Science, of Arts and Culture has not addressed. I come from Hillbrook, there's no township sport. I used to organize young people under the Sangala Games and form sporting associations as an individual at that time. You could access things like balls and everything else. Chair, I just realized that I was on mute and I've been speaking for 5 minutes.
No, we heard you.
Chair?
Hi, Honorable Tobias.
Chair?
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello.
I can hear you. I'm sorry. I realized that for 5 minutes I've been speaking and I've not unmuted myself.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Chair. Do you hear me?
Yes. No. We're hearing you until when you were talking about Hebron. Then that
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're with you all along. Yeah, sure.
Oh, that's good, Chair. I was saying, I used to organize a sporting coach in Hillbron under the Sangala Games. Those who have been in the Department of Arts and Culture then will remember that. But I'm saying, if you're going to expect the Department of Arts and Culture to deal with sports issues at the township level, at the school level, when they don't even deal with that at a township sports level, we will never achieve this. It means we will not produce women and men of sports who can also contribute to economic development in our country. Perhaps at some point, Minister, you might want to push it further and get more budget. I'm not sure about the capacity to implement, but I'm pleading on your good self to think about it as you do your work. I thank you very much, Chair and Minister. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Tobias. Before I close, I don't know whether, Honorable Minister, you want to make a reflection on what has just been said, or we are fine with it?
The Chair, I'm fine, and want to say the issue of concurrence, maybe we'll discuss it at another level, because it's not as simple as all that national can always do good. We get lots of good work in provinces, and for me, it's a matter of capacity of the state and leadership. We had the best province in the Free State, which was innovative and from a provincial level. So I think it's a matter for another debate when we reflect on the past 20 years, what has happened with the constitution, where are the issues, so that we also don't generalize, say, where did we get things right? But I think it's a subject for another debate because it is a very important topic to reflect on. But for me, the things about the capacity of the state at all levels.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Chair.
And that is Honorable Mare.
Thank you. I will be very quick, Chair. I just want to ask you, the DG and the Minister, through you, if they can compile eventually what was the loss with vandalism at schools over the last 3 years that you actually have to pay to actually put it back in the state that it was originally. If you weigh that up, and I think the DG did say that very clearly, that the most vandalism take place over school holiday periods. Now we have an advance for every year. We know what is the school holidays. And if you appoint a security firm for only the period, not full-time year, only for the period of the school holiday times, and you weigh that up to the cost that you have to spend on schools to bring it back to the level that it was before the vandalism, to make that comparison and see maybe there's a solution in that regard. And lastly, I just want to add to the last colleague of mine, there's a great after-school holiday programs, and it focuses well on sport in the Western Cape. And just have a look at that. Maybe it could be implemented at other schools or provinces as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mare. I'm sure the department noted that. As I close the meeting, Honorable Minister, DG and the team, thank you very much. There are things that we raise, which we were very much aware that they reside on the provinces. But Honorable Minister and DG, you'll bear with us. We only communicate with you, and we know that perhaps this is an oversight which must in the provinces, which must be played by the provinces. But as a committee which appropriate all the monies of the country, we use you and your department as our mouthpiece, so to speak, to convey some of the feelings and the things that we would like the sector to attend to, obviously within the with the bounds of the boundaries of the law. So I think that's I just wanted to make that one, and we really would request that the minister, the DG, and the department raise these things with the departments, because, for instance, if we start not appropriating money to the sector, to some provinces, and say, no, you didn't do this, and so on and so forth, it affects the whole sector. So that's one thing I wanted to raise. And then thank you, Minister, for the presentation, the response to the questions, and the DG and your management. Minister, we also note that you always find time to interact with this committee. You were able to jump out of the cabinet committee meeting to ensure that you are leading from the front. Indeed, we do raise political issues here, which can only be responded by your good self, and I think the committee appreciates that. Honorable members, I think we should also find a way of interacting with our counterparts in the provinces as far as oversight is concerned, because this thing of underspending, why should it be in the provinces? Why should it be our responsibility? Because those things should have been picked up by the provinces, that there's something which is not going according to the plan. I think we should find a way, late as it is in our term, of interacting with our counterparts in the provinces. Because, Minister, some of the things that we're raising with you, especially with the conditional grants, they literally affect all the departments, and there's something that we are not doing properly. I think perhaps as people are playing oversight, be it on the province or in the provinces or here at national. Well, you can even stretch it even to the local government. We also find some grants which are supposed to go to local government and they are not spent, and we reside in those municipalities. We see that there's definitely a need for this grant, but it goes back to national treasury. But with those words, thank you very much, and all of the best as you deal with the future of our children. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to the committee and the members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Good luck. Honorable members, I think the next thing we must go to the minutes. Let me see. But before I take you to the minutes, I think let just share with the committee that as the committee we are happy that Mr. Mashile Maubane, it's back. One of the company secretaries. We know that he had that thing just before the end of last year, where he was hijacked and he had to go to hospital and so on. And we're happy. We are most welcome, Mr. Mashile, and the committee really missed you, but we were happy you are back with us. Mashile, there?
Yes, Chair. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Can we see your face so that we know that we are not talking to us? Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Chair. And good afternoon, good day, dear members and colleagues. I'm back and I'm happy to be back with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Other members, let's go to agenda item number 4. Let's look at the minutes of the 26th of April. Those minutes were shared with the committee. Can I have the mover for the adoption of the minutes?
I so moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, Honorable Tobias moved, and Honorable Mare is seconding. Thank you. The minutes of the 26th of April 2023 are duly adopted.
Good.
Yes. Can we go to the minutes of the 28th of April? Mover.
Humphrey Memezi moves, Chair.
Honorable Memezi moves. Seconder.
Mlenzana, second.
Honorable Mlenzana, second. The minutes of the 28th of April 2023 are duly adopted. Thank you, honorable members. Can we go to agenda item number 5? From your side, Darren, do we have any announcements?
Hi, Chairperson. Yes, just a reminder, the next meeting is next week, Tuesday, with the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, also on the appropriation law.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Darren. Let me take this opportunity to thank you all honorable members for your participation in this meeting. The members of the media who may be on the platform, everybody on the platform, thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Long live
Thank
the
you,
chair.
Chair.
Thank you, thank you,
Thank you, Chair.
thank you, thank you.
Siyabonga,
guys.
Chair.
Thank you,
Siyabonga Sihlalo.
Baba.
Chair, for those who
Recording
don't know
stopped.
me, for those who don't know me, this is the ugly face.